Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting, but just to let you know, Ms. Cox will be joining us in just a moment. Ms. Prosnick can't hear.
Prosnick couldn't hear that, Michael.
Now can you hear? Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting us know. Ms. Cox will be joining us here in just a moment, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I would like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now 6:02 p.m. In order to limit attendance at public gatherings, a limited number of staff and board members will be in attendance in person at this board work session. The majority of our leadership team will be attending virtually via WebEx. The following board members are in attendance in person: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Christy Hassett, Catherine Sells. The following board members are in attendance virtually via WebEx: Angie Cox and Jenny Prosnick. Angie will be joining us in just a second, I'm hoping. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. A few reminders for the board members and staff attending via WebEx this evening. Please keep your microphone muted until you are ready to speak. If you have a question or would like to make a comment, let me know and I will call on you at the appropriate time. When I call on you to speak, please unmute your microphone before speaking, and when you are finished speaking, please turn off your microphone. And I am still looking for Ms. Cox. Let's go ahead and do our vision statement for this evening, and then hopefully she will be joining us by then.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sells. Board, we chose our Cornerstone Student Experience and our I statement, I seek and encourage talent development. As the I statement, as you know, and Ms. Sheila Smith and her folks are right in the middle of hiring season and have been working diligently to hire great new folks. And so as a part of that, we certainly try to implement hiring practices that reflect our vision and mission. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees were given the opportunity to submit comments via LISD's website during the designated time frame. I did not receive any comments at this time, and so there will be no comments read. I know Ms. Cox is trying to log in, I believe. Okay. So let's wait until we can get Ms. Cox on the line before we proceed with the bond update. Yeah. All right. Where'd she go? There she is. Okay, and Ms. Cox is joining us at 6:06. I want to make sure she's on.
There she is. She's there.
You see me? I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all right. Good to see you.
You too.
Okay, there she is. Okay, so we can go on. Dr. Rogers, I'll let you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sells. Board, we wanted to talk to you for a few minutes regarding our refunding opportunities of bonds and also selling some bonds. And I provided some information to you last Friday and some documents. And so I'm going to turn that over to Mark Youngs, and we also are fortunate to have John Martin here in person. So, Mark.
Evening, board members and others. If you would find the materials that have been provided to you, and while you're finding those, I'll just start with a brief introduction. I'm going to use the term this evening PSF, and that's an abbreviation for the Permanent School Fund. Permanent School Fund guarantees school district bonds, and so we get to pay a slightly lower interest rate because we have the state of Texas acting as a guarantor. So I'll use that expression this evening, and I'm going to give you a quick overview. The district has been benefiting from strong property value growth over the last few years. The district has amortized its pre-existing debt carefully over with 20-year amortizations, which is relatively short, which is good and creates capacity for us going forward. These refundings this evening that we're going to discuss pay off $5 million in principal. That likewise creates capacity. We are at a very interesting time in the bond market. Interest rates are very low since COVID-19 hit. The Federal Reserve, as you may have noticed from the news, has lowered interest rates to near zero. The Keller ISD, where I came from, we did a small refunding last week. It was the second 10 years of a 20-year amortization, $10 million. The all-in total interest rate was 0.9. In other words, less than 1%. So the bond market is presenting itself with some interesting opportunities for refundings right now, which we'll talk about in detail in a moment. So these refundings, low interest rates, paying off $5 million in principal, property value growth, those things all combine to create an environment that take a lot of pressure off increasing the INS rate. They all work together to create capacity for us. And let me make another observation, is that these financings that we've done since 2017, we've done 3 and we're contemplating a 4th this evening, overlap each other. So some of the dollars might get spent in 1, 2, or 3 years. And so these fundings that we've done so far, the 3 that have already been executed, they overlap. And so when we contemplate not doing some of these, some of the fundings, they impact the projects that we're anticipating completing. The last thing that's kind of an environmental thing is that we're in the second year of House Bill 3 as we look forward to 2021 school year. The Texas Education Agency, under the terms of House Bill 3, will lower or compress our maintenance and operations tax rate by about 5 cents as we look forward to next year. So we need to keep that kind of in the back of our mind. So we have 2 refundings and a conversation about new money. The first is a PSF refunding. That means it has the PSF guarantee. That involves $30 million of principal, saving about $5.5 million of interest. The second refunding opportunity is non-permanent school fund, meaning when those bonds were issued, the permanent school fund was not in the guarantee business as they are now. That is about $11.5 million of principal, saving about $7 million of interest. And that's the refunding that contemplates paying off $5 million from the debt service fund balance, which it can afford to do, refinancing the remaining $6.5 million at new lower interest rates. And then in terms of new money, we're presenting 3 scenarios this evening: $127 million, which would not increase the INS rate; $163, which is the amount contemplated by the long-range facility plan. That new money offering would increase the INS rate 1/3 of 1 penny. And then I'm going to suggest for our consideration this evening, because of the unusually low interest rates in the bond market, taking a look at refinancing the remainder of the voter-authorized debt of $285,000, issuing them all to take advantage of these low interest rates and capture those and lock them in. If the district were able to do that, the INS rate would go up $0.015. Now, $0.015 on a $200,000 house is $30 a year, $2.50 a month. I'll just put that into perspective perspective for us all.
And
Now,
Mr. Youngs,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned 285,000, but of course it's 285 million, but
just three more zeros.
just some zeros, but I wanted to.
Thank
make
you.
sure. All right.
285 million would complete all of the bonds authorized by the public in the election of 2017. So there's a cover sheet that you can look at that kind of summarizes the alternatives. The 126, which has no INS bump, the 163, which is a third of a penny, the 285, which is 1.49 cents. And then if you dive a little deeper, there are 3 legal-sized pages, and I'm going to explain each of the columns for you. I'll go into detail on just the first one. The other 2 are very, very similar. So I'm going to walk you through these columns. So the one we're going to be looking at in the upper right-hand corner is the $126.75 million. This is the new money offering that would result in no change in the interest and sinking tax rate. So column 2 indicates our existing debt payments. Then columns 3 through 8 represent the permanent school funding refunding, the PSF refunding, plus the $126.75 of new money. Those are summarized in columns 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then columns 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 is the non-PSF refunding. And you'll notice it amortizes in 5 years because we're paying off $5 million. And so that gets paid off very shortly. And then if I can call your attention to column 15, that's the combined new debt service. And you'll notice 147, 151, and you'll notice 151 stays constant for 8 years. We would structure this debt so that it did that for us. And there's no change. The 151 stays the same. The underlying assumptions, if you go out to the right, you can see the INS tax rate computation, 3 columns. Percent growth is the assumption we're assuming for property value growth. 8.81 is the actual rate last year. 8% we're using projecting next year. The appraisal district is telling us 15%. We're using 8 to project here. And then I want to call your attention to the bottom bolded lines down at the bottom. The true interest cost of the PSF refunding is about 1.9%. Next line down is the present value savings. If you read out to the right of that line, you can see 16%. And then the next line down is a non-PSF bond, 0.8%. The reason that interest rate is so low is it only goes out 5 years. And the very bottom line, you can see the present value savings is at 15%. Now, this present value savings is one of the metrics we use to gauge the worthiness of a refunding. 5% is good, 10% is great, 15% is remarkable. So these present values of 16 and 15% are a reflection of the remarkably low interest rates that are prevailing in the bond market today. Then you'll notice back in the body of the columns, the second column from the far right is the INS tax rate. You can see 36.75 cents, 36.75 unchanged. So let me pause there and ask if there's any questions of the board.
Okay, I've made a sheet so that we all so I can stay on track. Ms. Cox, do you have any questions?
And Ms. Sells, let me jump in for just a second. I'm wondering if it might behoove Mr. Youngs to go ahead and go through the other 2 scenarios, because I think the questions are going to be about the comparison in the 3 documents. So you might go ahead and go through that. And I would remind the board, you were also provided yesterday a great document by Mr. Fite, which I greatly appreciate the work that he did to try to get this cash flow thing on some decent sized pieces of paper. But it really told the story of what Mr. Youngs talked about, as far as if you choose 127, there's only 2 projects in year 4 that you'll be able to do, and that is the projects for high school turf replacements at 3 campuses and flooring replacements at 4 campuses. So that's certainly not what we had planned, but all the
Dr.
rest of
Rogers.
that money is finishing. Go ahead, Randy.
No, this is Tracy. I would
Oh,
like to raise a
I'm
point of
sorry.
order. Is there any way that we could get copies of what Randy sent us printed out? Because the cash flow,
Is it in there?
there was the list of documents, the list of projects that, for example, it showed, the one I'm thinking about, Dr. Rogers, showed only two turf projects, and then you had other projects, fine arts and stuff like that, that wouldn't be able to be done. Those would, and we can go to our laptops, I guess, and find them, but if we have them,
No,
I think they'd be helpful.
we can get you another copy. Yeah, we'll get you another copy. So, anyway, I apologize, but I think it might be better for Mr. Youngs to go through the next two scenarios of the 163 and the 285, and then let's just open it up for, because I know there's all types of questions.
Yeah, and I think that one question may trigger another question on another one of these other pages, and so let's just go ahead and do that. Let's let him go through the other two pages, and then we can start with our questioning.
Be happy to. So the next one I'll take a look at in the upper right-hand corner is $163 million. Those are the dollars that were projected by the long-range facility plan and would allow us to keep going with all of the projects as they're currently planned. The columns are the same, except for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 include $163 million plus the PSF refunding. So columns 3 through 8 are slightly different. And then if you go out to the right, the combined new total, column 15, the debt service increases from $151 million to $153 million. So it goes up by a couple of $1 million is all. This option would require the INS rate to go up by 1/3 cent. So that would complete and is consistent with the long-range facility plan. And you'll notice the second column from the far right, the INS tax rate going from 0.3675 to 0.3709. That's the 1/3 cent manifesting itself there. So then the third and final is the opportunity to lock in the low interest rates that are prevailing in the bond market right now, and that's the option in the upper right-hand corner of this spreadsheet, 285. That would issue all the bonds as authorized by the voters in 2017. Columns 3 through 8 reflect that 285 plus the existing PSF refunding. Columns 9 through 14 are the same as the other two. Column 15, the debt service goes from 153 to 157, and that increases the tax rate. If you go to the second column from the far right, you can see the INS tax rate goes from 36.75 cents to 38.24. That's an increase of $0.015. Now, it's important to remember that when we're talking about an INS rate going up by $0.015, as mentioned earlier, the impact on the owner of a $200,000 house is $30 a year. The other thing not to forget is that this tax rate this year is not happening in a vacuum. House Bill 3 has designated the school year 2021 as the year when they start to compress the maintenance and operations or M&O tax rate. As our values go up, House Bill 3 will compress our maintenance and operations tax rate next year by at least 5 cents. So as that M&O compression happens and the M&O goes down by 5, if we were to exercise this option, do the $285 million, take advantage of the low interest rates, that INS rate goes up $0.015 and is more than offset by the 5-cent reduction in the M&O rate by House Bill 3. So the taxpayer would still see a net reduction in their Lewisville school tax rate.
Thank you, Mr. Young. So I'm going to ask Mr. Martin to join us at the podium because some of the questions may be for John. And so anyway, I think we're ready for questions. And Mr. Miller, I'll loan you my sheet until she makes another copy.
May I make one last observation? At the bottom, you can see some of the assumptions. In the first line up from the bottom that is not bolded, you can see that the INS tax rates are assumed that the collection rate is 98%. The Lewisville School District typically collects its taxes at 100%. We're thinking because of the economy that we might see a slight erosion in that collection rate next year. So it's at 98% assumption in that year.
Okay, if we can start questions, Ms. Cox?
Thank you. Great presentation. So my question is, what does it look like for the tax rate for the next year if we take all the 285 million this year?
Good question. If you go to the sheet that has the 285 in the upper right-hand corner and go to the second column from the far right, you can see the 36.75 going up slightly, a penny and a half to 38.24. The next year, because of increasing values and the low interest rates, that INS rate can theoretically go down to 35 cents. And the following year down to 32, nearly 33 cents.
Okay. Ms. Sells, are we just doing one question right now?
Yes, if we could just
Okay.
do that, yes. Ms. Prosnick?
Thank you very much. So my question is, to your point about the compression, what is the magic DCAD evaluation that we can assume the full amount and that 5 cents? Is it 8%?
Yes, we're assuming
Okay.
8%, and so that would compress the M&O rate by 5 cents.
So what if it's 9%, I guess is my,
Then it might
Question.
be 6 cents.
okay, right.
It's
Right.
all based on a formula that's built into the state funding template.
Yes, I've tried to do that formula. It's not-
And you still have your hair left. I have lost mine.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Mr. Miller, do you have a question?
Oh, boy. I have a lot of questions, so I know, one at a time. So I think I'll start with this. I know I took it off, had an interview. So I think I'm apprehensive to increase the tax rate. I'm also very apprehensive to, I think about, I go out and I buy a car and I tell my buddy, man, the interest rates are so good. I got the money for my wife's car, and he's like, what's that? And I said, I don't know yet. I haven't got it. We're going to get it in 2 years. I mean, that's the way the average public thinks. And so those two things coming into this, the question I have primarily is, when we run these models, we've always done it this way, the out years are always at 2% growth. Now, we know that there is never a scenario in LISD history in this political subdivision that we have ever run a year-over-year growth on property values at 2%. We've run it at a greater percent. So even if we leave the tax rate the same or we increase it to, I think, the 38.75 or penny and a half, as you mentioned, or we basically sell bonds to cover all the projects, I would really like to see what the numbers are in actuality if we didn't run those out years at 2%, because we know they're not going to yield us, they're not going to run at 2%. And here's what we get into. Well, we got plenty of money, we can do some refunding. If that's our strategy, then we ought to just say we're leaving it at 2% because we take the excess funds and we do some refunding when those bonds come available. But it just seems to me that it's a more accurate model if we could show these models with the out years being at, I'm okay with a 6% or something like that, but not at 2%.
So may I respond? So if you look at the one that has the 285 in the upper right-hand corner, and you go to the percent growth, and you go down to, say, starting at the 2%, if you left that at 4, say, and went all the way down at 4s, to the degree that it's north of 2, meaning 3 or 4, the INS tax rate comes down faster. As values grow faster, that each penny raises a little more money at 4 than 2.
Right.
So then you could lower that INS rate quicker.
Okay, so I agree with you. That's a very good point, by the way, newbie. That's a very good point, except for the fact that that means that the political subdivision would have to do that,
Would have to do,
lower the rate.
you have that option every year.
I get it. And I think it's generally, it would go against us. I mean, keeping the rate flat is one thing. Increasing the rate and then having the chance to go down to 29 the likelihood is this board is probably not going to lower the rate to 29 because we're going to try and find ways to do refunding. And so I would like to see it be a little more accurate because we are unlikely, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, we are unlikely to drop our INS rate into 29.67, 16.72. We just won't do that. I know us, right? So
Well, I will remind Mr. Miller that prior to last year, I mean, the board has lowered the tax rate like 6.25 pennies over the previous 3+ years. So.
We did that on two
Yeah,
factors. We
yeah.
did that on the market drivers that drove that, which were the valuations and DCAD, and we then gave the benefit to the voters. We intentionally, there was a lot of talk about this, we intentionally decided with some different opinions, we decided not to lower the tax rate, but to hold it, or in one case lower it. I think we lowered it, right? So we've gone back and forth. We've tried to be good citizens about it. I'm just suggesting that I don't think it's the wrong word to say disingenuous, but I don't think it's fair to say that we could go down to $0.1672, because we aren't going to do that. I mean, it's just highly unusual that we would ever do that.
So the presentation isn't meant to forecast board action. It's meant to represent economics.
But if you did not.
Yeah, but economics, those economics would be tied to board action. I'm just saying, as a matter of fidelity, it's more likely that property value growth is higher than what's in the module. I would like to see a model that has more fidelity to reality than the unlikely scenario that property values increase at 2% year over year.
So, Mr. Martin, is it fair to say that this is the norm of how this is presented? And
It is, Dr. Rogers, because we don't know what your financing needs are going to be. We can't do refundings unless the refundings are available. That's a tax law problem. So we can't just go refund every year. If there's no bonds to refund, we can't get to them. They have to be eligible for refunding, so you can't just pull them from the bondholder. We also don't know what your financing needs may be in the future, whether if you decide to go back to the voters 3 years from now for a $200 million authorization or a $2 billion authorization, right? So how do you plug that in? Because going out here, the problem is with this forecasting, and we see this all the time, is to your point in the 2%, you get much past next year, and the crystal ball just gets cloudier and cloudier the further out you go. So really, that's why we tend to focus on just the near term, at least what we can project what next year's tax rate's going to be, and possibly have a pretty good idea what it might look like the year after that.
I know that this is a normal model that we use. We did it for the bond, the FAC, we did it for the prospectus. I get it.
Yep.
I think, and I want to respect the one question, Catherine, because I do have a lot, and it's that we have a number of puts and takes tonight that are a little bit different. Should we put some projects at bay? Should we finance the entire amount of money that was available to us because we can get it at a low rate? Those are different discussions that, for me, require us to have an element of fidelity within those columns that is a higher level of accuracy than kind of a lower run rate to play the conservative play.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Lasan?
Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome, Mr. Youngs. We're glad to have you. I don't have quite as many questions because I had the opportunity we're all going to have our individual meetings with Mr. Youngs, and I had mine right before this, so thank you. I got to scoot a little bit. Hey, Mr. Martin, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So this, I'm cautiously excited about this $285 million option. And because Mr. Martin is the face, we're used to seeing, I'd like to hear your take, as kind of an expert on, what you think. I mean, is this something that we should really seriously consider because of the interest rates and stuff? Mr. Youngs is, I believe, thinks that it is, and so I just want to hear your take on that.
I can tell you that I believe it's a worthy option for the exact reasons that your CFO said. That interest rates are extremely low. you're continuing to get very large jumps in values, and you're able to leverage 2 refundings within this deal. So there's kind of these things that are kind of perfectly lined up to where normally you'd say, I can't swallow that much. But here with $0.015, with the projected values, and even using a 98% collection rate next year, one of the things that, quite frankly, when Mr. Young's asked me to run it, I was like, well, this is going to be up there in the 40s. There's no doubt about it. And when I came back and I said, this might be something to look at after all. So he did his math in his head better than I did. But when you start looking at it in terms of the total tax rate, and we start looking at, I think that Mr. Miller brought up the pro forma that was used to the voters. I believe all these tax rates are lower than what was promised at the highest point. At the highest point, I think we were talking about going to 44 cents.
We were.
So you all have done a phenomenal job at keeping your promise to the voters, which certainly bodes well the next time you have to ask them for something.
Ms. Hassett?
I would also like to welcome Mr. Youngs to our board. Great to have you. I'm sure Dr. Rogers is very glad to have you, so he is not interim any longer. And Mr. Miller knows that I do love refunding. I love saving the voters' money compared to what we promised. So if we do have property revenue of greater than 8.8%, the numbers could change in our favor and go down.
Very much so.
And the projection is that probably will happen.
Yes.
But we're still waiting for summer and the TEA and the
We're waiting
DCAD
for the,
and
yes. We're waiting for the appraisal district as well.
One question for now is you were mentioning that if we go with the 2 cents, we would still possibly save money. Does that include tax rate? We would save tax rate. The 5 cents, does that include if we choose to go with the 5th golden penny? Or I can't remember all of that.
It includes the copper pennies that the school district is entitled to.
Okay.
Yes.
Including the unanimous board vote.
It doesn't include that penny. That's still out there.
Okay.
So instead of 5 cents, it would be 4
4.
cents. That's correct.
Okay.
What, wait, what includes the 4 cents? These numbers?
I'd prefer to wait. I think what we had talked about, at the last budget workshop is to wait to discuss the 5th golden penny until, our next August budget.
I just wanted to clarify.
But you are
what I
correct. The
understood.
5 cents does
not include.
That's right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And I wanted to reiterate, some of the times, Mr. Miller, that we had reduced the INS rate is because we could not do refunding with the increase. So we've done fidelity to what we've promised to the voters and made sure that we can pay off bonds early when we can. So that's the only question, and then we'll go around again.
Okay. Ms. Cox, do you have another question? My question was the same on the golden pennies, and I met with Mr. Youngs just prior to Ms. Lasan, so I asked questions there, so sorry. But Ms. Cox, do you have another question?
Not at this time.
Ms. Prosnick?
Yes. If we do the 285 million, we are legally required to spend that money in a certain amount of time. What is that time frame?
John?
The Attorney General has a policy rule more so than a law, and that's a 10-year period. There are consequences that relate to arbitrage rebate in terms of if for some reason if you were able to earn more on those proceeds than what you were paying on. So, for example, the yield on these bonds is 2.25%, and you earn 3%, and you still have proceeds left after 3 years, then you would have to restrict that yield to the yield on the bonds. Right now, you're getting about maybe a 0.5%.
Can I make sure, Ms. Prosnick, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, we can't see you, so I wanted to make sure that we have not lost you.
Not yet.
Okay, and now Ms. Cox's picture has, okay, there she is. Okay, I don't know why we can't see you. Okay, as long as you're still there.
I'm here.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, and so I think a follow-up question would be is where do we see those rates going over the next 10 years, since it is a 10-year question?
I don't know.
Well, let me rephrase Ms. Prosnick's question, and John, do you have any inkling that in 10 years it's still going to be a 0.9% like what Keller ISD was able to refund
I
with?
mean, and that's what we're showing you guys here on the smaller issue, 0.82%. You know, on the refunding side, on the new money side, that new money ARB yield's probably about 2.2. You know, we've been saying for last several years, you've heard me come up here where we talked about refundings. How much lower can they go? You know, and they keep going lower. But we're almost to zero. So you got to believe they're going to start going up. But I think that's you got a pretty good spread there between what you're earning now and what you and getting to the arbitrage yield at some point in time. It's not a penalty, so to speak. That just means that you've earned every dollar you can possibly earn. And because the feds give you the opportunity to borrow on a tax-exempt basis, they don't want you just to sit on that money and gain yield on it, arbitrage the deal. So that's why you have to pay everything back over what you're paying on it.
So in answer to the question, we would spend those funds within the time frame contemplated by the long-range facility plan, which was certainly less than the 10 years as suggested by the Attorney General. Right. And in answer to the question, what direction do we think interest rates are going? They're probably going to stay flat for a while and then trend up because they can't trend much lower. And that's one of the reasons why we should look at the 285, because rates can't go much lower. They might go lower on the longer end, but on the shorter end, they can't go much lower. Shorter end meaning 0 to 10 years maturity. On the longer end, they might go down a little bit, but they can't go a whole lot lower than they are now. So if they were to go any direction, they'd probably go up a tiny bit.
I misspoke on something earlier. Ms. Prosnick, you asked how long we had to spend the proceeds. That Attorney General rule of 10 years is how long an authorization is good for. I was mistaken there. The sale proceeds, it's just all under tax law there. So you have as much time as you need. You just have to restrict the yield after a few years. Sorry about that.
Okay. Ms. Prosnick, I see that your microphone closed off. I just want to make sure you're still there since I can't see you.
So I was just muting me.
Okay. Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you so much. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I think it's important that we have the discussion on the 285. I think we've moved too quickly to the 285. I agree with Ms. Hassett that we should always, and I think she and I and maybe Ms. Prosnick were the ones that led the effort to get to a deliberate plan to pay down debt, because debt has been one of the things we've been critiqued for. But trust me, this 285 will get us a lot of criticism. It's like this. How do you like my new home? Got a loan on it. It's great. Wait till you see my lake house. Oh, where's the lake house? I haven't bought it yet. But the price and the money was so good that I got it, and I'm going to build the lake house in the future. That's the way the general public hears these things, right? And so what we're talking about is we're at a point in time where we don't have good inputs to make those conclusions. For example, we're not going to be at 2%. That's not an issue of fidelity. We're not going to be at 2% in those out years. We are not going to be around 8% probably when it's all said and done, right? We're always wrong at this time of year. And the other thing we're always wrong on is that the market's going to be as bad as we think it is. Now, I get that it's at 0.5 or 0.9, and those are unheard of. Last year at this time, we would have said that's very unlikely. In fact, we were talking about this in December of 2018 in a very different fashion. So I just think that I think it's hard to sell that to the voters. If you guys think you can package up a elevator pitch and explain that to the voters, that we sold all the debt and we're paying on that debt at a higher rate, and we did that in the midst of COVID, a time where government entities were trying to find ways to take pressure off of people, then hey, go for it. Come up with some comms plan on how we sell it. But I think we've got to be very, very careful, which takes me to my last thing that I would like to talk about in my next go around, which is what projects can we put a hold on to keep our tax rate where it's at today from an INS perspective, not an M&O perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Lasan, did you have anything else?
So I don't have a question. I do have a comment. Is it appropriate
That's fine.
time for this?
Yes.
Okay. So my comment is I don't agree with what you're saying, Mr. Miller. I think that, I don't think you have a crystal ball or anyone else in here about what exactly voters are going to think. And I do think that 0.9 is nearly zero. And I think we are being very smart with our financial decisions by considering it. The other thing I want to say is when I saw Mr. Fite's email about with the projects with the red lines through them, I couldn't help but think that with my crystal ball of what I think people are going to think, people are going to be disappointed, because I sat there on that Facilities Advisory Committee and we came up with that list, and we knew the tax rate and what it was going to increase to. And as Mr. Martin said, we're way below that now, and we still will be with whatever we decide here. And I just don't think it's fair to, not, especially some of these 20-year, all of them are important, but, just 20-year refreshes, to put those aside in this time when especially we are having our people who are on staff that we trust with these decisions are telling us that it's a good time to do this. So that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lasan. Ms. Hassett?
I had another question. Could we expedite any of the projects in years 5 and 6 to do them sooner if we do go ahead and go with a full loan amount right now?
Randy, I know you're on the WebEx. Is that something between you and Mr. Young's? Is that something that's feasible, is to move some of the year 5 and projects up if we sell the 285?
Yes, sir. I think it would definitely give us flexibility. If we could look at bringing future projects sooner. We wouldn't have to do that at a certain time of year and tie that to the bond. So.
Thank you very much. And I do appreciate all the information you sent earlier, Mr. Fite. Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
One other really quick question for if we do go ahead and sell the 285 at under a penny or under 0.9%, I'm assuming we'll also make interest on the amount that is currently waiting to be spent.
That is correct. We'll earn interest on idle money.
Right. So it will even reduce what that would end up being.
So we're earning about 0.5% on our idle money right now.
So if we spend it at just under 1% and we're earning at 0.5%.
I want to be clear that if we do that volume of 285, some of those maturities are going to be longer than 10 years. The offering I mentioned that we did last Thursday was just 10 years.
Okay.
So these would be 20-year bonds, and so the interest rate associated with year 11, 12, 13 would be slightly higher than 1%.
Okay.
But the all-in tick, John, might be
We were showing 2.23 in this number,
2.23.
which we always hedge a little bit, so it's really about 2 today.
And a 0.5% interest rate for
On the earnings side, yes.
earnings side until we end up
Yep.
spending it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And now moving through on this round, I think,
Can I
Yes,
jump
go
in, Ms.
ahead.
Els? I'm thinking that this might be a good point. You know, when you have three things in front of you, if nothing else, the best thing is to at least narrow it down to two to continue the discussion. And so I'm wondering if we can just sort of go around and ask the board, are they comfortable with removing or not removing the 127?
okay,
You know, or one of the three to then zero in on two side by side. Otherwise, we're still looking at three options, and the discussion could take quite a while.
okay. Ms. Cox, did you hear what Dr. Rogers had to say, and do you have a comment?
Yeah, so my comment, and then when we go around again, I do have a question. Yeah, I'm not in support of the 127, so I would be open for the 163 or the 285, because I think we owe it to the voters to see these projects through.
Okay, you want to go ahead and ask your question at this time also? So we'll go
Yes,
this
please.
last round, and Dr. Rogers, if it's okay, if they could just finish up their questions and then also give us that. Okay, perfect. So give us your preference and finish up your questioning on this third round. Thank you. Ms. Cox.
Okay, so my question was, Ms. Hassett kind of brought it to my attention, so I guess for Mr. Fide or Mr. Youngs, with us moving up projects, would that be a cost savings as well? Because we're not going to have the increased construction cost because we're getting to do those projects earlier.
Certainly. There's inflation in the labor market and there's inflation in the materials market, both. So the sooner you get the project started and finished, you're going to save on those inflationary pressures, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Prosnick?
What is the cost of waiting on issuing the incremental portion this year? What's the difference in cost between the 160? Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
The 163 and the 285. What's the cost of waiting on issuing?
In terms of annual debt service, it's
Yeah.
$4 million.
Okay.
And it's the difference between a third of a penny and a penny and a half, between 163 and 285.
And then my next question is there any capacity built in those interest and yield rates?
On the earnings side
Provided.
or on the spending side?
And columns 5 and 6.
Yes, ma'am, those are, we obviously, we don't know until when we sell the bonds in 3 or 4 weeks, but this is where rates were, plus about 20 basis points as of May 27th.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Can we have your preference on moving forward with the three scenarios?
I agree that we promised the voters those projects, and I agree with Ms. Lasan that I think that there are parts of our community that would be very disappointed not to see some of those projects come through.
So
I wish that we had had this kind of a cash flow on an intranet before receiving it on Saturday, would be my only other comment.
okay. Thank you, Ms. President. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I think all three should stay on the table. I think with all due respect to my colleagues, there's no doubt about that we made some commitments, and I think we are sitting in whatever room that we're in, remiss that there is a world that is in a crush right now. And what we're talking about is even borrowing money beyond what we will spend in the next year, if assuming that we can't get the project started. I mean, the metaphors that I've thrown out are real, and they're the way real people think. And we can sit here and say, we promised the voters all these things. You know what we promised the voters too? That their kids would go to school and be on a block schedule and be on certain clubs. And you know what we weren't able to do this year? We weren't able to do those things. Did we fail on our promise? No. There was an external factor that forced us in to think differently. And this does not think differently. The only thing different here is thinking about bringing in the extra money early because it's at a lower interest rate. It doesn't look at tightening up. You know what? We are a government entity, so there are some things that we may not be able to get done on the committed schedule, and what we're doing is we're foregoing any of that discussion, and we're going right to, well, we're going to do the things that have the two highest tax rate levies on us, and we're going to put the one that's at the baseline on the side. I'm just not so sure that that's the way the real world is thinking, and that's the way we're going to enter into the next 60 days before we establish our levies.
Okay. Ms. Lasan, did you have something else?
Well, kind of obvious here, but I would like to just consider the 163 or the 285. And just a little comment there. I mean, yeah, some scary stuff's going on in the world right now, that's for sure. But all that aside, you know, we have what's in front of us, and we have to make decisions based on what's in front of us. And I think some of that's considered, and so that I feel pretty good about it. So, Ms. Hassett?
I also would like to consider just the 163 and 285. I'm not in favor of the 127, 126. Because one thing, some of the projects I've already seen portables delivered to Flymount High School. There's already stuff being placed at some of our campuses, and those are some of the campuses that would be taken off the list. So what would we do with, there's already talk in the neighborhoods about those renovations with things being delivered. So I'm not in favor of removing those things that we've already started placing based on prior board decisions. But I did have another question, I thought. Can't even read my chicken scratch. Just one second. No, I guess I already asked that one. Nope, I've already asked all of my other questions. Okay. Thank you very much for the information. I appreciate the information, having this idea brought forward to the board.
And I'm okay with removing the 127. I don't think, for the same reasons that has been mentioned here. And I think that I would just like to move forward with 163 and the 285 discussion.
So, Ms. Sells, I guess my next question, and totally get Ms. Prosnick's, comment regarding they got this on Friday, these documents. The board's being asked to make a decision about this a week from tonight. So I'm not for sure, unless there's more questions, that we shouldn't move on to the next. And we'll just put both options in front of the board for consideration, the 163 or 285, and then y'all can decide next Monday, unless there's other questions for clarification. I'm not for sure that it is beneficial for the board to hash it out tonight, unless there's questions. This is really a board work session to answer your questions, because your decision making is going to happen a week from tonight.
I think you make it much more.
Microphone.
I think you make it much more palatable for us, and likely for a unanimous vote, if you take a look at those out years and make those a little more accurate. I mean, the fact is, if we get a 0.9% interest rate, we're not going to call a lot of these bonds in the future, especially if they're 10-year rates. So let's look at what 6 or 8% is on those out years and see if that INS rate could be reduced to something that's a little more palatable in our community. I mean, we are going.
I'm sorry. Mr. Miller, what I would propose is maybe you and Mr. Martin and Mr. Youngs could visit between now and next Monday. What you're bringing up, in my opinion, really is not a factor, but I certainly want to respect your opinion on that. And I'd just say, why don't you sit down with the experts and y'all can have that discussion I mean, we want to provide you what you want, but I don't see where changing a 2% to a 4% makes a difference on whether or not this is a valid opportunity or not for LISD, but.
Well, it makes a difference as it relates to what the tax levy is going to be. And that's the fundamental target of the votes that we'll take in August. And I do think that's a material element of consideration.
Well, the tax levy, if the interest rates are, if the percentage is higher, the tax levy is less, not more. So why would a taxpayer be concerned if at 4% the tax levy is even less than what it's shown on this paper?
I'm suggesting that if your out years are more than 2% growth, compound growth, they will start by a lower rate versus where you've got them showing at 2% growth year over year. It's going to assume you need a higher rate. John?
My struggle with your point, with all due respect, is that when you get out that far, what are we supposed to project for new bonds coming up, for new debt? Because that's going to impact that tax rate too. Because you might be done with this authorization here, and we might be able to know we're not going to be selling any bonds. This is it. We've done everything. We're not going to have a bond sale in 2021. So you might not see a bond deal for another couple of years until there's another refunding that comes up or whatever it may be. But at some point in time, you're going to have these facilities needs don't go away. So you're going to have that regardless if you get 5% growth in kids, 10% growth in kids, or no growth in kids. Your maintenance issues and that sort of thing, you're going to have to issue debt. You're going to have to do the refreshes and things like that. So what are we supposed to assume out there? That's the struggle that I have in trying to, I see your point, but I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know what the crystal ball what do you tell me that you're going to need to issue bonds in 2023 and 2025 and 2027 when we get out here to the 2%.
No, but what I'm saying is that you can look at a 30-year history and say that we will never have a 2% compound annual growth rate on our property value. And that is factored in here. And one could say, well, when you get to that point, you could lower your INS tax rate to $1.97 or 0.197. We're not going to do that. And that's where I'm saying that the models make a difference as it relates to instantiating what that 387, whatever we talked about, that penny and a half variance, it plays a material role in establishing that. I mean, the fact is, if we're successful with this bond at 1%, we're not going to be refinancing any of these things for a long time.
I can tell you it's not going to be 1%.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk 2-ish or so.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, would you all be in agreement that we can move on and you all could get together and if there is a need and John Martin and Mr. Youngs feels that there's more information to give the board, I ask that that information be given to us as soon as possible. And also that if the board members have further questions that you think of later, that those be available. Of course, we'll turn in our regular questions, but that this dialogue continues, but off.
Yeah, and Ms. Sells, please know, I mean, if there are other questions from trustees, we want to answer them. And I do believe, Mr. Miller has valid questions that he certainly wants answered, and those are the two experts that can answer them with him. And then whatever he's provided, we will certainly make sure the rest of the board's provided.
Okay.
Kevin, I am not offended by being pushed off.
Thank you.
We'd be happy to rerun the models with the adjusted numbers.
Okay.
Be happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, seeing nothing else?
And let me just say, Ms. Sells, I'm just at least I'm appreciative that the board at least is going to for sure ensure that the projects in year 4 are going to be done, whichever decision y'all make next Monday, because I do believe that y'all voted on year 4 projects. That is part of the promise, not the timeline, but you voted on those projects, and I think for us to ever go back to the voters in the future, we've got to keep our word. And so I appreciate at least that.
Thank you.
Dr. Rogers, could I be clear? Could I be clear on one thing, what the board is going to see next week? Just as a reminder, I know you all have been through this before, but just because there will be 2 agenda items, okay? We have these 2 issues that Mr. Young's described in those different sets of 5 columns, okay? So the first one will have the approval of a not-to-exceed amount. So I'm hearing feedback from the board that not-to-exceed amount should include the $285 million, okay? You guys can ratchet it down however you want at the meeting, okay? But when you see this document, it's going to be that higher number. That does not mean we're thinking for you. That just means we have to start someplace, and it is a not-to-exceed number, okay? The second one, the second agenda item will be the non-PSF piece, the smaller deal. Don't forget about that because there's lots of savings in it, right. And you guys have worked hard to gain that additional $5 million to pay that debt down to achieve all that savings. So that's in that deal, and there'll be not to exceed amounts in that as well. So there's right. 2 items, and we'll be ready to proceed. We've got the offering document in process right now, so we'll be cutting the first draft of that out this week.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I see Ms. Prosnick's hand is up, and she did come in. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, because it wasn't provided with the new large rate, what is the difference in fees between the 2 deals?
Do you know that, John?
Yeah, I've got it right here. I'm going to give you total cost of issuance,
okay.
Which will be cost of it. It'll include the underwriters. So it'll be for the 163, $1,455,000. The 163.
Right.
Because the other one, it doesn't waiver. We still got the same amount.
So the 285 is the same amount?
Not following. The small issue, the smaller deal, the costs are the same on it.
Then what about if
we go for the whole ball
yes.
of wax, right?
Yeah.
Then that number is $2,172,000. So what did I say? 1,455 versus 2,172, Ms. Prosnick?
Yes.
That's it. And that's all costs. That's underwriters, that's all fees, that's the rating agencies, both rating agencies, lawyers, our firm, everybody.
And we're only using 4 underwriters, correct, for either one of these deals?
Yes, it's a larger issue than you all have done the last couple of years. Yes, ma'am.
Would there be any benefit in including a 5th?
No benefit whatsoever.
Okay.
Is that all,
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Okay. Ms. Hassett?
So cost of issuance, we would then, of course, save money in cost of issuance if we didn't issue further bonds and included it all.
Right, you won't pay any cost of issuance if you don't have any bonds to sell.
Yeah.
So,
just wanted to.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, when you add them all together as a percentage of the deal, it's much less.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on, we're going to...
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yes, thank you. Move on to Dr. Rapp.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we have Dr. Fitzhugh, Miss Angie Deaton, and Miss Lewis here with us this evening to talk through the Knight High School and LLC program evaluation report, and this is happening according to our program evaluation schedule. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fitzhugh.
Okay, and I am going to share my screen. Is everybody seeing that? Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're here to talk about the Lewisville Learning Center Accelerated Program and also their Knight High School program. Just as a reminder, we do all of our program evaluations based on Victoria Bernhardt's book, Measuring What We Do in Schools. This is the locally developed template that we've used based on that, and all of our programs have one of these completed, so we know what we're looking at year to year, as well as when we come and present to the board. And this is just a quick copy of what we have, what Ms. Deaton has completed for Accelerated Night High School. It's kind of their map of what we're looking for. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. Ms. Deaton's going to talk about a little background about both of the programs.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. The Accelerated program at the Lewisville Learning Center is a direct teach program. It's designed to provide students at risk of not graduating with an alternative education option. They may be behind on credits or just unable to be successful in their home campus. This year, we graduated 110 students through May. And then the night high school, the process is the same for the Accelerated, but we do utilize the optional flexible school day program waiver to provide the flexible school hours of 4:15 to 8:15 each night. And 9th through 12th grade classes are available. We, as of today, graduated 57 students. So still working with one student to complete her IGC, and we were able to do that today. The enrollment process for the campuses are very similar. All of the enrollment requests have to start with a home campus counselor submitting an application. Students who have been coded as a dropout for 30 days may apply directly to the night high school program. But any students who do not meet the 30-day dropout requirement can apply through their home campus counselor for consideration for an admission to night school or possibly the day program, whichever is more appropriate for their needs. Every student does attend an interview to help individualize a plan for their purpose at an accelerated program, whether it is to go through to complete a graduation, dropout prevention, or simply catch up and move back to their home campus. We have 8 terms, which are 4.5 weeks long each year, and students are given the opportunity to start every 4.5 weeks if it's appropriate in their overall schedule to do so. The only classes that we do not accelerate are EOC tested classes during the day accelerated program. For obvious reasons, we want to make sure that the students have all of the information and are prepared as they can be. We do not accelerate VLA classes or any career and tech classes that they may attend. The master schedule for our campus for both the day and night program, we do develop one at the beginning of each year based on the current enrollment, but that schedule has got to be flexible throughout the school year because our master schedule will change with the applications of the students that come. And so the teachers typically have 3 to 5 classes that they're ready to implement within the school year if needs do change. And then when the students are, as I said before, if they are planning to go back once they're caught up, then we make sure that transition is made to the home campus. And then toward the end of their high school career, they may choose to stay with us to complete and graduate.
Okay, and so now we're going to talk about some of the results of the data that we've seen over the last few years. We're looking at how many credits students have gained, the graduation rate, course completion, and then TELPAS for some of our language learners. And so one of the data pieces I pulled together was the entire LISD graduation rate because that is what LLC provides support for all of our campuses. And so as you can see, our graduation rates are starting to close some gaps. We're starting to see that ELL number is a little bit lower than the other ones, but it's actually increasing. And as we've talked about in previous conversations, it actually is, compared to the rest of the state, really high up for a large district. Whoops. The next piece that we looked at was the enrollment trend at LLC in the night high school program, the Accelerated Night High School. And so what you can kind of see is that we have some moving of where students are choosing to enroll. And when we talked with Ms. Deaton, one of the things we're finding out is that sometimes students move from accelerated to night high school or from night high school to accelerated, depending on what best fits their schedule. But that's kind of the general trend in the number of students that we're serving. In terms of graduates, again, LLC, the last cohort when we started running this data was 2019. We now have 2020 data that Ms. Deaton shared. But you can see that we're starting to have more Knight High School graduates, but the numbers overall are trending around the same area. So this was an interesting one. We wanted to see how many of our students were staying on track with their initial cohort in terms of graduation. And so what we did was we looked at when students first enrolled as a freshman, because that determines their graduation cohort. And then we monitored at the end of each year how many had stayed over time with their cohort. And what we found was that the majority of students were able to maintain or graduate with their cohort, continue in with their cohort, because some of them still have not graduated because their cohort hasn't. We do have some students who have dropped out, and we do have a handful of students that they're in an additional year or 2 years. In terms of courses completed, one of the things that we found, and it's a good one, is that a lot of our students are taking core courses as their main areas when they get to LLC Accelerated. Each of these courses represents a half a credit because that's how the 9-week term works, but that's one of the trends that we found. When we looked at Knight High School, again, what we saw was that the core areas were an area where we saw a lot of students enrolling in classes. One of the pieces that we started to note was there was a little bit of a decline in enrollment and what all was happening with that. And one of the things that we realized was House Bill 5 really altered the graduation requirements, starting with that class of 2019. Some of the other classes could take advantage of some of the flexibility, but really it primarily targeted that group. And that really allowed for more options for students. It moved away from that 4x4. And so we're seeing fewer students fall behind in those core areas, and we're seeing some of our campuses meet students' needs in different ways. But we're seeing an increase in student interventions needed for students that are newcomers in ELL and special education students. And so with that being said, one of the things when we looked at the number of credits earned over time, you kind of see that there are fewer credits being earned at LLC, but there are more credits being earned in Knight High School, and part of that's flexibility, and I think it's based on student need. 84% of credits started at Accelerated were completed successfully, and 95% of the Knight High School ones were completed successfully. That being said, students earned an average of 3.3 credits in 2019 at LLC. TELPAS, we just wanted to see if our language learner students' needs were being met. And so one of the things we looked for was to see, is their TELPAS proficiency level in English growing each year? In 17-18, TEA altered the TELPAS assessment and moved to online listening and speaking, so data wasn't available. When we turned around in 18-19 and got ratings back, we noticed that still our students were showing a great amount of growth in terms of each year progressing a level with TELPAS in terms of how they were previously performing as well. In terms of post-secondary planning, 100% of the graduates are taking a post-secondary planning meeting, and they're also completing the senior survey, which we're going to disaggregate that data here over the summertime. 39 students took advantage of the ASVAB test that was administered on campus. 36 were able to take the TSI at campus. And LLC had 47 IGC meetings that were able to help students with the graduation. So our findings are that LLC Accelerated and Knight High School are successful at supporting at-risk students' educational needs. We talked about the courses being completed. The majority of credits earned by students are in core content areas. And the count of students participated in Accelerated is declining, but Knight High School is increasing. So our recommendations to the board are that we submit the optional flexible school day program application for approval at the June 8th board meeting and continue to offer Knight High School, that we continue to provide accelerated programs through LLC, that we further explore ways to reach out to at-risk students to ensure we're being proactive in identifying them. Part of that is through developing an early warning system, working with registrars and counselors to make sure we're identifying students and making sure we reach out to see what their needs are. We continue to expand ELL and special ed offerings, and that we expand some mental health transition programs for students. And our last recommendation is that we continue to evaluate student success when a student returns to their home campus to determine if their students are able to remain on level with their graduation cohort. And with that, I think, are there any questions? And this is just a reminder of our calendar. But do you have any questions?
Okay, let's start with Ms. Prosnick. Do you have any questions, Ms. Prosnick, or are you there?
Yeah, it's when the screen is shared that's when I fall off the world.
Okay.
So
we're glad you're
I'm
here.
back. I'm back. So I do have a question, and it's based on the LISD for your graduation rate goal graph, where it seems that we are declining with economically disadvantaged students. And I was wondering if you could speak to that.
I do think that's an area that we need to explore. It's a trend that we've been watching, when we talk about the TAPR and we've looked at those numbers. It's one of the things with an early warning system and reaching out to students that we feel are at risk. How can we better reach that student group to make sure we're supporting their needs well?
So I guess that's my question is when you call it an early warning system, I mean, are you talking middle school? Are you talking, I mean, when do you think that intervention is best?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've been working with Edugents, and we actually have a beginning model of an early warning system that we've seen working. It works for all grade levels right now, and it's looking at some attendance and some grade data so that we can kind of look and see when do we see big changes in behaviors that would point us in a direction of a student might be struggling academically. I think there are some other pieces that Ms. Deaton looks for in terms of working with students as well, if you want to speak to those, Ms. Deaton.
Yes, we've actually started a couple of different early warning trials, I guess, if you will, with different schools this year, whether it's based on attendance, but also in looking at the fluidity of the enrollment between the day program and the night program. One reason, if a student gets down to one course and they want, to ask them to commit to an entire day was often something that they didn't find appealing. So that's one reason that we've allowed them to go to the one night high school class to complete. So really continuing that individual education plan based on the evolving needs of the students and the families. But the early warning systems, we have identified some students just from grades in AWARE or some other needs, but to know that the Edugents information is coming up, I really feel like that's something that we can take and start, not only take some of the burden off the home campus counselor so we can help identify some of those students, monitor them a little bit, and increase the awareness of the program with not only the staff, but students that might be able to benefit from it.
I also want to say I really appreciate the post-graduation session that you have with every single one of those students. I think a plan is always good for everyone, and I think that certainly gives them direction. And I will say one of the sadder things that we had to miss this year was that graduation ceremony. So good work. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Mr. Miller? Ms. Lasan? Ms. Hassett?
Ms. Prosnick really touched on it, but I'm going to go back to it just to make sure that I heard the answer. So 8th grade students who might be showing signs that we might need to make sure and monitor them, how are we going to make sure that they're not lost in the transition between 8th and 9th if they're already having poor attendance or some of the other struggles that might?
Yes, ma'am. We actually have started a program probably last year, where the 8th grade, one of the incentives that we have, because Instead of being an all-year situation, those are 18-week courses. So one thing that we started with our 8th graders 2 years ago, I think, was giving them an opportunity for a high school elective. So when they leave us, they actually leave us with at least 2 high school credits, which put them back on track. If they're very far behind age-wise, we do allow them to do freshmen with us. We don't accelerate a ton of freshman classes, but we do try to be mindful. And then that post LLC, if you will, planning of what are they involved in, what are they interested in, and doing that kind of handoff to the high school. For our native speakers, we prep them and test them in language. We had one student leave us with 6 high school credits because he was able to test out of 4 language credits. So anything that we can to individualize, and then if they're interested in sports, we make sure and connect that with their home campus. Music, anything that as we get to know them, we try to make sure that that is connected with the home campus. We had kids interview for AVID. If it's things, anything that we identify, we work with the home campus as much as we can to ease that transition into high school.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Cox?
Great presentation. I was just curious, what does a part-time night school look like?
A part-time night school could take only 1 class. Each class is done independently. So we actually added a 0 hour, which would mean that night school students would have access to 4 different classes, just like the high school day students do. But a part-time student could have only 1 class with us.
And then the rest of class is taken on their main campus?
Well, full-time students, no, they would just be enrolled with us. But if they're full-time at their home campus, they could take. Yes, ma'am. They could be dual enrolled.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
ma'am. All right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. And I had some questions, and now I can't read my writing. Ms. Hassett, you jinxed me. So I think at the very first of your presentation, you talked about the one you're still working with. Was that correct? Or did I misinterpret that? That was fixed today. Okay.
Oh, we had one, yes, ma'am. We had one student graduate, complete her IGC today, so we added 1 more to our night school graduation today.
Okay, that's, okay, I wanted to make sure that I understood that. And so, and the courses that aren't completed, and that was on one of the slides, have we made any correlations to why those aren't completed? I mean, is it trying to get into the mind of the kids?
Night school is set up such that if they miss 5 times, then they are no longer enrolled.
Okay.
And then reapply next term. So that could be part of the reason for that. Students may just leave and not complete. Okay. Students leave us just like they do other people, but for night school, I would say that would probably be the main reason would be if they don't pass. Obviously, we do have some students that just don't do the work. And to the day program, I would say that's a similar situation, whether it's absence failures or they just simply quit coming to school or doing the work.
Okay. Just wanted a little bit of clarification on where that, I think it was close to 16%.
And that puts them kind of on our mentoring list. So it kind of, we do an evaluation, as I said, for every student. And so once they miss one of those goals of completing even 1 class, then it kicks in mentoring and peer tutoring and just all sorts of the programs that we offer to figure out what that issue is to help support the students so they don't have that issue happen again.
Awesome. Does anybody have any more comments or questions? Okay, I don't see any hands raised or anything. So thank you so much for coming back, and I will echo Ms. Prosnick's sentiments. I think that, the one thing that I've missed was that night school graduation. To know the work that was involved in those students and seeing them reach that goal when it's just so meaningful. So we appreciate everything you all do, and thank you all so much for the
Well, thank you
presentation
so much.
tonight.
We appreciate y'all's support. Thank you.
Okay, continuing on with Dr. Rapp.
Yes, so Dr. Bigenho and Ms. Lewis are here with us this evening to present your update regarding Virtual Learning Academy.
Good evening, Board and Madam President. So I wanted to share a little bit, hopefully, hold on a second. Make sure you can see the slides. There we go. Texas Online Learning, TXPSN, COVID-19 and beyond. Obviously, online learning's been in Texas for a while, but it has really hit the spotlight in some new ways because of COVID. And of course, this has us thinking across the state, what are other ways that we can get this? That's the beyond part. So let's get started. Back in 2007, legislature put into law and established what is now known as Chapter 30A, the Education Code, basically granting or telling TEA to create TXVSN, the Texas Virtual Schools Network. And from there, in 2009, opened up these two branches. So there's actually two parts to TEA, or to TXVSN. One branch is the full-time online branch. You can see that over here on the left-hand side, the online school authorizers. And then the second branch is the catalog courses. These are the providers for supplementary programs. And this is a category that we are in terms of BLA. So currently there are 13 providers in catalog, and that amounts to about 8 content providers. So when I say providers, those are districts. Content providers would be the publishers. So of the 13 providers out there, we're using a variety of different approaches, from district developed, such as our ASL course, to published content that we then modify. Other districts do the same thing. Then there's also the full-time online branch, and that is, there are currently 6 active providers there. Amounts to 3 content providers. There are 8 authorized providers there. And in 2013, it was frozen. The state would no longer allow, it was put into law that there would be no more full-time online schools at this time. We're going to freeze it at what we have. Within that context, just to give you the history here in terms of BLA, we started in 2007 with 4 courses. These were largely geared towards seniors. By 2018, we had authored, Lewisville, BLA, has authored 15 courses, and we're serving grades 7 through 12. The 7th and 8th grade, though, are being served as acceleration. So that's usually in math, where they're accelerating more in the languages. We also started teaching the state-authorized professional development course that is required for any teacher who wants to teach in a course online. Today we have we have 29 courses. We've got some new courses under development. We have 11 full-time employees, that includes 6 teachers. Currently we're running with 35 adjunct teachers as well during the summer. You can see that we've grown tremendously since we last met and talked about this. We had over 2,000 enrollments, fall and spring combined. This summer, the numbers aren't fully in yet. The dust is settling. Currently, we're over 2,500 course enrollments in just a single summer. That's over 1,100 students being served. So here's a list of the courses that we have, and you'll notice that we have them in most of the core areas. We've got some electives. Notably missing is science. It's one of the areas that we're looking at current development for science courses to add to the catalog. So all of these courses here are approved or through waiver process, and you're well aware of the waiver process. I've submitted, I think, 4 of them this year. But we have all of these courses are now approved or waived by TXVSN to be used in the catalog, as well as then granting our students instructional seat time when they're used on our campuses. So what does the law permit or limit us from doing? So all of this is in the Texas Education Code, Chapter 30A, which was created back in 2007. The first item up, there's a moratorium in place. And so that's that January 1st, 2013. This is the piece of law that froze full-time online at whomever was operating at that time. So at this point, that's frozen in time. There's the only place that full-time online can happen is if you are one of those OLSs, one of those school districts or charter schools that is operating, was operating at that time. There are no more than 3 TXBSN courses eligible for any one student in a given year to be counted toward ADA. So if you're taking a course from the TXBSN catalog, such as one of our courses, that course will grant 60 minutes of time to be counted toward the 240 minutes required. The code, though, limits that to no more than 3 courses in a year, or 3 credits, actually, is how that gets translated in back. The TXBSN catalog courses are all limited to high school students. There are no middle school options other than for those students who are accelerating. So a student who is accelerating, 8th grade or 7th grade student accelerating in math, may take one of these courses, but there's no actual middle school content for them. There's no elementary content as well. The only place where you will find elementary through senior, through 12th grade, that's grades 3 through 12, is in the full-time online schools. So those schools that are operating full-time online have invested in developing curriculum and using curriculum for the elementary grades from grade 3 and up. You'll notice what's missing is grades K through 2. There are no options for those students at this time. All the online courses must be approved currently by TEA. So TEA is the branch of TEA is TXBSN. They must be approved by them in order to go into the catalog or to be used on an online school. But currently, that process doesn't exist, and therefore the waivers are the replacement. Students attending the full-time schools must be enrolled in the Texas Public School District the prior year. This is essentially it was put in place, if you remember the OLSs, one of the things I maybe neglected to mention here is that the online schools serve the entire state of Texas. So any student in the state of Texas may attend one of those, there's 7 online schools. This was to keep the students from going from homeschool in one district and hopping off into another district full-time online. So it's kind of to try and block the voucher sense of voucher. And then the last point there is the funding purposes for student attendance. It's tied to the successful completion of the course. So a student can complete a course, but if they didn't complete it with a 70 or higher, then the school district does not get to count those minutes served in terms of seat time toward the ADA calculations. So you can see a list at the top here of the 8, or actually there's 8 authorizers in the state. You got Grapevine, Colleyville, Hallsville, Houston, Huntsville, Responsive Ed, Texarkana. And then there's 2 that are sitting out there that currently are not operating. So all of those are active. But Red Oak and Southwest Schools, which is the charter, neither one of those is active. Yet they are holding what we term a golden ticket. So our students go to these schools. We lose them. And you can see on the left there's a map there of Texas with all the blue dots. This is coming from the Texas Connections Academy out of Houston. They have somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 students on average attending there at any given time. And so this was from their fall 2017, and yes, one of those blue dots is us. And you can see that we've lost, just a snapshot of data that I had, looking from August 2017, December 20th, 2019, estimated using $6,000 for base FSP as an estimate. We lost in excess of $1.3 million during that period of time. Now understand that we lose students. When I say lose, we're losing them to full-time online virtual schools. These students still live in Lewisville, still paying taxes in Lewisville, but now they're attending one of these full-time online schools in the state, the ones you see above, and that's where then that money goes. And you can see down below, we've got the kind of group these things together. The bulk of our students are going to either the Texas Connections Academy Responsive Ed or K-12 Inc. That's just a smaller snapshot there from 2018, 2019, August to December. So these limitations, how does this play out? How does the law play out? Well, basically, it means that we cannot compete for our own students. So a student can exercise their rights to attend an online school. And because we are not allowed to provide full-time online and get funding, we lose them. And they go to one of the 7 schools actually operating in the state at the moment. There are online options available for high school, but those are only eligible through TXBSN or through the, actually TXBSN catalog only has high school courses, and grades 3 through 12 are in the online, the full-time online schools. There are no options available for outside of those online schools for grades 3 through 8. That is to say that we're in the situation we're in right now. We have a rich catalog of courses that we can use in our district to serve with our high schools. However, we don't have that same richness of courses developed currently that we can use because the law has not allowed us to serve students' grades, anyone lower than grade 8. There are no public school options for grades K through 2. I say no public school online options. You may, if you listen to CNN on the satellite radio at all, Laurel Springs is advertising a lot right now, looking for students for their private online school. They're out of California. And we did actually have a student go there, I think, a year or so ago. There are no public school, the funding for ADA is limited to the successful completion of 3 TXBSN courses during a year. So this is coming out of the catalog, not out of the full-time online. And in that case, the funding limits, if we have a student who needs 4, maybe they need 4, maybe they need full-time for 1 semester or 1 grading period, and then they want to be on a campus afterwards. We cannot serve them that full-time and receive the monies due to education. And then finally, the online courses eligible to generate the ADA, they must all go through TEA approval, and they must all be taught by teachers who have completed the TEA-approved PD course. And that is, that's going to be a bottleneck, and in terms of where we're going right now, in terms of fall and spring forward. These are where currently there's no course approval, so you're seeing all the waivers, and TEA recognizes that there's going to be a backlog, and they're trying to streamline some of that. We'll see how that goes. I've had a lot of calls recently, a lot of school districts reaching out to find out how we do things, wanting to know how we're running the school, how do they build the school, how do they get their online schools up and running, whether it be full-time online or whether it be what we're doing, which is running through TXBSN as a provider district. And almost to a T, the 22 that you see up here on the top list, those active districts, they have all been surprised by what they are not allowed to do. I just had a conversation with Richardson ISD, and they were rolling forward to try and build a full-time online academy to start in the fall. And they were shocked that the state law doesn't allow them to do that. The only thing that allows us to do this right now are the 2 attestation waivers that are in place. And they have nothing to do with online learning. It's just purely ADA. So then we have these other schools here, school districts. These are school districts that are also, they're asking, they haven't really committed yet in terms of where they stand with things, but they're in conversation as well. So you can see it represents a pretty broad piece of Texas, from south to the valley, to large districts, to small rural districts. So TEA
Chris, we lost you. Chris, we lost audio from you.
Chris, can you disconnect your earpiece and go through your laptop?
All right. Hello?
Yes.
All right, we're good. Back in. All right, so the waiver for the course review process, there's nothing new there for us. There is a new waiver out there that we can apply for, and we have submitted it for review. It's for the 2020-2021 school year only, and that waiver is for the PD requirement for teachers authorized to teach TXDSN courses. Now, we know and believe that PD requirement is really important for quality teaching. However, this is a bottleneck, and by them waiving that, it allows us then the flexibility to leverage our existing courses in some new and novel ways across the district, should we find that to be useful come fall or spring, whatever model we happen to step into, as well as if things change partway through the year. So we have courses that are approved, and this particular waiver will allow virtually any certificated teacher in our district to teach the courses within that space. Immediate need. We need to address the 3-course limit. That is something that needs to be addressed as it relates to limiting what we can do as a district, expanding the online option for grades K through 12. We've got to get in there the K2. Districts are not going to be willing to spend a lot of money trying to develop and build out for long-term K2 if the state isn't going to allow that in terms of the long run. And then the same thing for grades 3 through 8, there's very little there that exists outside the full-time online schools. And then the last here that I have is to establish a waiver partially lifting the moratorium. And this is where I'm kind of taking TXDSN and moving it in another direction. And to partially lift that waiver, allowing school districts to create an online campus, developing the content to be served only to their own students. So only students who are eligible to attend in that district. And in doing so, creating a sense of local control, then allowing the curriculum to be approved locally as well. And this is going to be a tough fight, I can tell you that right now. But the really important part is that it gives them local control and ownership over that curriculum, and believing that these courses can only be taught with our own students, then why would TXDSN, whose mission and role is to serve the entire state, it also then keeps us from being competitive with rural districts. So you can see here this fresh approach, I call it. You can see the existing model here, these 2 branches of TXDSN, proposing then a 3rd branch that would be, in this case, Lewisville ISD students attending Lewisville ISD full-time online campus with curriculum that we have developed, approved for by us for our own students. So the next steps, requesting the waivers. That process is already moving. Writing letters, advocacy letters. I have a letter that I'm drafting right now that hopefully will get to Amanda and then eventually to leadership team and the board, taking a look at some of these items here to go to the governor and the commissioner, collaborating with other districts, continue to collaborate on what we need to change in these existing laws, as well as what legislation we want to see drafted in addition, I believe November, the first week of November, is when we can first submit legislation in Austin. And identifying channels to get that legislation into the House and into the Senate, ideally with sister bills going across the aisle, across the chambers. And then finally, collaborating with other districts. When it comes time to go down to Austin, to not let it be just Lewisville ISD in the room surrounded by a lot of public interest groups, but literally public school districts coming in saying, this is what we need in terms of online law. So with that, we've got this proposed VLA focus for the 87th session, supporting the creation of a locally controlled school district operated full-time online school serving only those students eligible to obtain campuses within that district, while placing the burden of curriculum development and course approval within the district. What this statement addresses is protection to rural districts who otherwise are threatened by increasing the number of full-time online schools able to serve any student in the state of Texas. It cuts out the waiver, not the waiver, I just lost it. Voucher, the voucher argument, eliminates the argument for the voucher. We also puts the curriculum in terms of local control. We can actually create courses for our own students this way and the flavor that we want them, removing the need for statewide oversight on these courses. And at the same time, it keeps the statewide options available for TXPSN. I would also suggest that because the larger conversation, this isn't a conversation yet, other than some backroom conversations with different districts, is that we also need to be part of the conversation about the TXPSN statewide, because that is also going to be out there. And if we don't participate in that conversation, that we won't have an opportunity to help shape that going forward as well. So with that, I'm going to stop. I believe that's it. And any questions?
So, Ms. Sells, let me just say a couple things. First off, as you can tell, Dr. Bigenhoe is a great advocate for virtual learning, and we're very fortunate to have him. We do believe, while this is not a legislative priority, and I know some of us, some of the trustees and I've, talked about this in their questions, this might be something that we need to revisit because of just the times. I think even as Mr. Miller said earlier, I think the times will require us to be more nimble in this area. And so I do believe that we need to take advantage of exploring these opportunities, particularly post or in the middle of COVID-19. I think also, though, Dr. Bigenhoe has learned sort of the hard way that while there's a lot of people in favor of this movement of expanding virtual learning, that's not all pure of thought as far as all of them being champions of public education. So we'll have to continue to navigate those waters as we move forward. But anyway, it is something that we wanted to bring to the board's attention and sort of go from there. But we do believe that we need to try to expand our opportunities for our students to have more virtual learning if they choose.
Okay, thank you. And let's start with comments and questions. Mr. Miller?
Thank you for your presentation. I have no questions.
Ms. Lasan? Ms. Hassett?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bigenhoe. Greatly appreciated your presentation. As you and I have talked a lot, and I really appreciate your advocacy for our students within our area and within the state. It's greatly appreciated. I do have one question on moratorium. I totally agree with the idea of lifting it partially. What I think we need to start using words is more of what you've got at the bottom. We need to not use the word moratorium. Because we have the TASB resolution later, I've talked to many people outside of the district, different trustees around the area, different groups, and they're very nervous about the lifting of the moratorium. So if we can continue to have discussions with other districts that would benefit for having such offerings within their schools, we need to state it like you have on the proposed VLA focus. So these are curriculum-based developments approved within that district. So my concern is lifting the moratorium. For our district, we actually do have 2 of the online charters in our current district. We have Responsive Ed, and then Texarkana ISD has just opened iSchool Prep, I think it was called, and it should be starting fairly soon, I'm assuming. So lifting the moratorium, as some outside groups have wanted, would be a very expensive endeavor for our taxpayers. We do not need a third public education system within the state, because that would be harmful to our taxpayers. So that's one thing that a lot of the people that I've talked to around the state are very, very concerned with, lifting the moratorium. So we need to make sure that we're explaining that we're not trying to add online charters. We're trying to serve our students. That's 100% what we talked about, and it came through 100% through your heart, is we are trying to serve our students better. And so I'm just trying to make sure that we make sure that as we have discussions with other districts and other professionals who might be leery of this new idea, that we try to use words that won't put them on guard right away. Because I do think that this will, like Dr. Ryder says, this is going to be something that could be beneficial to our students long term, especially short term, but long term overall. How do we as a district serve our students better for those that choose to use it? So that's my only issue, is we need to try to focus on what we're trying to do within our district, and probably try to stay away from the word moratorium.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Ms. Cox?
Yes, I just want to piggyback, Dr. Bigenhoe. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, and I love the synergy and excitement, because the VLA is truly amazing, and I can tell you that several parents have been emailing saying what a wonderful program it is, and how the students thrive. And I think we've seen in this pandemic how some students have actually done better, at home virtually. And I think this is something that we can hang our hat on. So I am ready to write letters with you. I'm ready to go to Austin, and I am ready to fight for some change for LISD and our students. So thank you very much.
I'll be glad to have company.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Prosnick? Ms. Prosnick, are you there? I know. Is she trying to get back on? Off on. Okay, I'm going to let Tracy, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of go back to some of the comments that were said earlier. One of the things that I think about, hey, Jenny, I'm stealing your spot, is
wait. Oh, my goodness. Okay, it is 7:54. Let's take a 2-minute until we see that she's back. I don't want her to miss comments.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Jenny. We can see you too.
Small miracle.
We're in adjournment for just a second, so
Sorry.
that's okay. We all needed a break anyway. We just didn't let Angie or Christy go on a break. Catherine, we have Ms. Prosnick.
I'm going to see if I can plug this.
Welcome back, Ms. Prosnick. Thank you. Okay, so you were up next for comments on VLA. And
Yeah. So all I wanted to say was that I agree with Ms. Cox, and I'm happy to drive the car to Austin because I think that it is very important to promote. I love the idea that you promoted with the third arm, and I just want to thank you for all your hard work on this subject.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Glad to have you on.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Mr. Miller, now?
At the risk of being the least popular person in the room, I'd like to understand, and maybe Dr. Rapp can take me through this, but when you have the Texas Tech program and a lot of kids successfully passing that, you've got a lot of existing core content, a lot of classes available. We're building a lot. We're building stuff for other small school districts and helping them. And I do care about helping them, but primarily I care about helping LISD. And so it begs the question, is there a strategy that suggests that we incorporate more of those programs rather than seed some of our own that we could use for other districts? Let the Texas Tech program become the marquee program, and then us pivot from that where necessary.
If I'm understanding the question correctly, there is no other program currently. So the only way that you can utilize an online course in the state of Texas is it has to go through TXPSN. There is no alternative. So that's why we have the problem that we have, in the sense that we can't utilize our courses. We can't take and do a quick pivot without a law change or a waiver currently to say, let's take this Edgenuity course that we need because we're going to be online in the fall, and so here's Edgenuity science, we can do physics, here's chemistry, here's biology. And that can be our starting point. We can't do that without a waiver from the state because there are no other options.
So the Texas Tech program is essentially not approved curriculum for LISD as it relates to the state. I mean, they're state certified education curriculum. They may not be certified by us. I'm just trying to figure out here, is there duplicate effort when we start doing things where we get interest from the Valley and they want to use our courses? I mean, I get the value and all that, but at a time where we want to be efficient, are there things that we could be doing to capture kind of an ecosystem of VLA providers like yourself that conform to TEKS, and then we kind of create a repository of them, and then we use them for across Texas school districts?
Yeah, let me jump in for a minute, Mr. Miller, because I think I understand what you're asking. So there is, and Dr. Bigenhoe, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why we first jumped into this virtual world back in '07 is we wanted to create our own virtual classes, our own online classes, because we can control the content. We can make sure the content is valid and good, and so we can certainly depend on some of these other providers, but we can't ensure what the content is that they provide our kids. And then, of course, I think what Dr. Bigenhoe's trying to get across is that even then, we cannot give our kids right now in LISD a pure online full route to graduate high school. And so, and with the TXVSN rules of only allowing 3 courses, it really limits a kid that might choose that, hey, I need more than those 3. And so we're just asking for some flexibility in some of those guidelines. So, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Miller, also, if you go back to page 3 of Dr. Bigenho's presentation, it has the list of VLA courses approved by Texas VSN. These are all our designed courses through our staff. They've created that. So we can't access that for our students until we submit a waiver to TEA. We don't have TEA waive English 1 regular in-person classes. They don't have to approve regular in-person classes. But if we're wanting an online version that we have to our own students, we have to submit a waiver to TEA. Additional steps, and we're trying to remove all of these additional steps that we're trying to do for our own students. Yes, these would also be available to TXVSN for other districts, but we're trying to eliminate the extra steps and paperwork that we're having to do just to serve our own students. It might be.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. Yes.
Sounds like Ms. Hass has got you covered.
Yes. Okay. And does anybody have any other additional?
I'm sorry, I was just saying, it sounds like Ms. Hass has got you covered. I forgot to turn on my mic. You have to put up with semantics up here at the board because I was giving her a hard time about the agenda item later on. So thank you for your presentation and putting up with us.
Yes.
Very good. No problem.
Does anybody have any additional comments or questions? No, I just want to say thank you. I will tell you that my daughter, who was a senior this past semester, came into a quandary where she wanted to do choir and theater, but she still needed a history credit. And so VLA met that need, and unless she had had that option, I'm not sure that she would have been able to retain both of her electives that she had worked hard the previous 3 years to be able to do her senior year. And I will tell you that I questioned whether she would succeed because she had succeeded on a campus, and I didn't know how that would go. And I will tell you that I'm very pleased at what she learned. I have no doubt that as she moves forward into college next year, that the education she received virtually is just as excellent as what she would have received in the classroom. And I just wanted to say thank you personally for making that opportunity for her. And I look forward to the day to where we can serve every student in LISD ourselves, no matter what way they want to learn or need to learn. So appreciate your work, and I believe all the board will back you in whatever you need. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. Moving forward, Mr. Colbeck.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ells, members of the board. This is a topic related to single sign-on, and it's basically our single sign-on SSO portal and our provisioning system for account provisioning. As you know, LASD is using a lot of digital resources, and we've had a single sign-on solution in place since 2015, and it's branded, as you may know, as the L-Hub. And what we've been doing is we've really been monitoring that space, looking at other products that are available, and looking at what features are out there. And we've worked with the Procurement and Contracts Department to do an RFQ to look at the different vendors in this space. And really what we're looking to do is try to take an approach to like data standardization around the process of provisioning accounts, and also setting up integrations for single sign-on into common and regular applications. So what we're planning to do with this is we want to basically do a level of a proof of concept, a demo with this product. Obviously, the timing on this is somewhat challenging in that we have a board meeting, in June, and we do not have one in July. What we'd like to do is do that proof of concept, and essentially once we do the proof of concept, this is a strategy we've used for several different technologies of late. Once we implement that proof of concept, essentially much of that setup would be completed, and we'd be ready to actually implement that single sign-on for the start of school. The idea on that would be we would not be changing the naming, we would not be changing the URLs for people, so it's not creating confusion. I think the benefit on this is that it's going to give us a tool that we feel we can provision quicker. For example, when we're doing like our high school ELA adoption, there's a lot of back-end work that has to happen on that to set up those accounts and make sure students that are in classes have access to the right resources. The tools that we're looking at should make that process faster and make it so that we can get students and staff access to that content quicker. So the concept on this would be, with a successful proof of concept, we would then plan to procure that with that successful proof of concept. So as you may have seen in board book for next week, there's actually an item in there for the board's action as well, pending successful proof of concept. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions you might have about this.
Okay, and we're going to open up the questions with Ms. Lasan.
No questions.
Ms. Hassett?
No questions, just thankful for the single sign-on. Thank you so much.
Ms. Cox?
Questions.
Okay. Ms. Prosnick? No questions, thank you. And Mr. Miller?
No questions.
Okay, and none from me also. Okay, continue on, Mr. Colbeck.
Well, let me jump in here on this next one,
Okay.
because this all hinged on a game of chicken foot, and Mr. Miller winning. So I know, but anyway, I'm hoping that he's still in a good mood over his win.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. This topic, as it appears in board book, is virtual collaboration solution and related products and services. And essentially, this is around our usage of Cisco WebEx. And as you know, with the, I guess, promptness of COVID-19 and knowing that we were going to be doing an extended spring break and needing to put some sort of collaboration and meeting platform in place, we needed to move quickly, make a decision, and get something implemented that we could use in the spring semester. And Cisco is providing us 120 days worth of licensing for their solution, and that solution is really it's kind of an add-on to our current phone system that we have in place through Cisco Call Manager. So those 120 days are almost up. We're to a point now where we're going to have to purchase some licensing. And I'm going to I just want to break down how this works from a feature perspective. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at what we're trying to do and how the pieces fit, there's three big areas. And the first one is telephony. And that's basically the ability to make and receive phone calls. And if you recall with our at-home learning plan, there were going to be phases to that. We were going to be doing that in increments. And the first phase on that was making phone calls to families. And as many of you know, the common denominator for a lot of parents is still a phone number. Knowing that we have folks with potentially may not have internet access, contact information might not be accurate, so we needed a mechanism to call. So with Cisco WebEx Teams, and this little icon is the WebEx Teams icon. I'll explain that a little bit more because there's a couple different tools within the portfolio. What WebEx Teams allowed us to do is basically take somebody's computer or their mobile device and allow that to act as basically a smartphone, similar to how their phone would work in their classroom or in their office. their desk phone. And what's nice about that is it allows our staff to be able to make and receive audio and video calls without having to provide any personal, cell phone information. It also allows them to do that without, hosting a meeting. There's call control right in the application. If they want to call somebody, they hit pound, dial the number, hit dial if it's an external call, or if it's an internal person, a couple clicks of the button and you can call. So it was a very nice tool to quickly get up communications for the district, regardless of where somebody may have been. On the collaboration side, what we were recognizing a need for is to have a platform that would allow us to have continuous teamwork. And what that is essentially setting up spaces for, types of work. So for example, in a classroom, spaces were set up for every class, departments have spaces, campuses have spaces. And what it is this persistent space where you're bringing your team together. And that's different than if you look at, for example, another communication platform in that you might be able to host a meeting, but is that persistent space there to keep the communication going outside the context of the meeting. And then obviously within that space, we're looking for a way to have a secure workspace to share files, chat, and also, you can still host meetings in there. So WebEx Teams supports up to 200 people in those meetings. And obviously, I already touched on it. It provides us real-time communication platform to text, do audio and video calls, and screen share and whiteboard. And then ultimately, within meetings, teachers used WebEx meetings for full class instruction. So when they were doing the full, inviting their whole class to a session, they would host that in WebEx meetings. Students would join within WebEx Teams. Teachers use WebEx Teams, for smaller groups. Some teachers use WebEx Teams for full class instruction. WebEx meetings give a little bit more control. But the students connected to those meetings through WebEx Teams. We pushed Teams out through a student's iPad. They could connect to it. If they didn't have Teams, they could connect to it through a web browser, or in some cases, they may have actually, called into a meeting. So in that phased response, when we were rolling this out, within WebEx Teams, what we had to do is obviously right after spring break, we had to mobilize the district, our district leadership, our campus leadership, preparing for our staff to come back from that extended week of spring break. So what we did is we used WebEx Teams for that persistent group space, and from March 22nd to March 24th, our district leadership team, being our campus leaders, administrators, they hosted over 1,100, almost 1,200 meetings in preparation as we were getting this off the ground. Over 22,000 meeting minutes. So it was really used to operationalize the district in response to COVID-19. And then the next phase of that was having those leaders then facilitate their own meetings and set up their spaces for their teams and their campus folks, department people. That happened between March 25th and April 1st. And as you can see, that went up quite a bit, up to 7,700 meetings, over 205,000 meeting minutes. So it was adopted very, very quickly. And then it provided the first phase for teacher contact to families. It provided that platform for faculty to call parents, which could have been their home phone, cell phone, to dial externally out of WebEx Teams. And that week, as we were doing that kind of check-in with the families, we had over almost 35,000 calls. And then we knew at the same point as students were going to be asked to come back into that virtual environment, people were going to need some support. So we used Cisco Contact Center to provide a support structure for parents, students, and staff. We set up basically this at-home learning support, and that had technology, instruction, learning and teaching, special ed, guidance and counseling, chiefs of schools, and then LISDAC. And we set that up too with English and Spanish support. And there were from the time that we set it up to the last time I ran the report last week, there were over 12,600 calls, chats, and emails through that platform. And while Cisco Contact Center, what was used for people to log in and make those phone calls, WebEx Teams actually provided that back channel chat. So if a call came in and somebody wasn't sure, they might have put them on hold and they hit somebody else up on Teams and asked, what the answer to something is, or they might have talked to them and said, okay, we'll transfer a call. So it was used kind of behind the scenes as well for the people in those support queues. And then ultimately, we used WebEx Teams and WebEx meetings to host our live virtual meetings. And this is from April 6th, was, after we did that extended spring break, through May 27th. On the telephony side, there were almost 500,000 calls, and it's pretty crazy, over 27 million minutes worth of calling from WebEx Teams. On the collaboration side, we're just short of 1 million active spaces, over 11 million messages, and then this is interesting, over 500,000 file shares. And I noticed that even like with my own kids, it was a convenient platform where if students were doing homework, they could snap a picture with their iPad, send it up and share it with their teacher right within Teams. So that worked out quite well. And then on the meeting side, where you're hosting an actual meeting with more than just another person on it, there are almost 175,000 meetings during that time. Over 4 million meeting minutes, so it was adopted quickly, and that got us through the school year. And at this point, we still need to use it. So obviously, right now we have summer school going on, and it's really a continuation of from our feature perspective how we used it during the school year. But we're using WebEx Teams to support secondary and elementary summer school. So those students that are enrolled in those programs have WebEx Teams still active, and they're using it through those programs. And then the other thing is, as we were kind of ending the school year, several different groups reached out and said, hey, we want to continue to use this with students throughout the summer, and some of that might have been for a camp. It might have been, I put in here extra learning opportunities, and that could have been teachers asked about doing a book club with kids on their campus. Some of the GT teachers reached out wanting to keep some of the projects going with kids, obviously fine arts and athletics. So we set up a process where we're running a script every night to try to continue to provide access to students that need it, as long as teachers are putting them in those groups and engaging with them. And then obviously, just ongoing district operations at this point, as we still work in a socially distanced situation. I don't have board meetings listed, but obviously we're using it for the board meeting. WebEx is going to be used heavily for professional learning throughout the summer. Obviously, we're in the hiring season. We're using it for interviews, special education. I think that was actually a really positive thing that came out of this, recognizing that this has been a good tool actually for parents as well, where there's a convenience factor in there where people are able to join the maybe a 504 or ARD meeting a little bit easier. And then obviously the blended work environment, where we're still doing some work at home, some in the office. And then at this point, we don't know what our 2021 school year is going to look like. So we definitely have a need to continue keeping the platform in use. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And then our plan at this point is to bring this forward next week as a recommendation item. And essentially how this works is, I said this early on, that the WebEx platform would be kind of an add-on to our current phone system. So if you recall, in the 2017 bond program, we implemented the phone program. We had the hardware, the licensing, all that stuff bundled. So this is basically going to be just an add-on that we'll be able to add on to that program this year. And if we wanted to renew the following year, we'd have the ability to do that. So with that, I'm going to open it up and see if you have any questions.
Okay. Ms. Hassett?
I don't have any questions. I just appreciate all the work that you've done to make sure that our teachers didn't have to use their own devices, but they had a usable tool that they could communicate with students and parents. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Cox?
Same comment as Ms. Hassett. I think it was a rough start for our teachers in the beginning, but I think we're very appreciative of the WebEx, and I appreciate your team working above and beyond to get it implemented for our students. So very, very excited, and it's a great tool. Me and Ms. Prosnick are enjoying the meeting tonight while in our comfy office or wherever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Prosnick?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I do appreciate the work in getting it up for our teachers. But when you talked about the features of WebEx, are those features unique to WebEx, or are there other platforms that could have offer the district those same things?
Some of it, there are platforms that'll have some similarities, and it really depends on the platform. So for example, if you look at like Google Meet, for example, there's a simplified version of that. You're going to lose some of the persistence chat, some of the messaging built into that. And I think the other part of that, for example, if you look at other meeting platforms, there's different tiers to it, right? Where you can have, there's different tools that you can use to host meetings. But what's a real difference in this one is when you're hosting a meeting, the meeting's over and the context is over after the meeting's over. Where the usage of WebEx Teams, which is very different on this, is that space continues after the meeting. So if the meeting's recorded, that records the meeting right back into that space. If people have questions about it during that same time, it's tied to the context of that experience. And that would require us to find another platform that could do something like that. I think there might be a possibility to do something like that with Zoom. I have spent some time researching that. But I think one of the big differentiators in this is one of the key components that we needed was the calling component. And in the feature that we had, or the time that we had, and when we had to have it implemented, we were able to do that without changing any of our direct inward dial numbers, our website information, contact information, phone extensions that are in the classroom, auto attendance when somebody calls a campus. So what we were trying to do is layer that tool set on top of the infrastructure that was already there. And we did that, and this is crazy. We did that, we set this up in 10 days. And I don't know if we could have done that with completely changing out another platform. So I think there could have been other options available to get it done in the period that we were able to do it. That I'm not sure we could have done.
And so my question then is, and I looked and I didn't see it, and I apologize if it's there in the 8th meeting. I didn't see it when I looked for it today, which is what was the rubric for getting bids going forward, or did we just, because you said you went through procurement, so I'm just kind of curious, were there other platforms?
What we did is, on the procurement side, it was an RFQ specifically for the WebEx component. So we're getting pricing specifically for it because we've already had it implemented.
And so we have not done any kind of a process to see what other platforms could be or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah, and Ms. Prosnick, let me jump in for a second. We discussed whether or not we wanted to do a longer agreement with WebEx, and it was my decision to do a shorter one. We need this system for another year, but I didn't want to get tied down to this system because these systems, are probably going to evolve very rapidly in the near future, and so that's why we felt like, okay, one, we know we need to extend the system for the summer, and we don't want to retrain everyone for next school year if we have to go into, but I didn't want to get locked in long-term with a system that who knows what's going to be there a year and a half from now. So that was my decision on that part of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Mr. Miller?
Wise thinking, Dr. Rogers. So I am trying to understand, I think you guys have got us kind of boxed into a procurement method that because it's integrated with the phone, it extends as part of the bond, and therefore it doesn't have to go out to bid. That's kind of what I heard.
And I may have to get Mr. Martin to chime in on that part, but I think you worded that right.
Yeah, so, we would never do this with anything else. And so it seems to me that this, and what we've done in the past, we pulled out Gardner. If you look at Gardner, there are two companies that are in the upper right-hand quadrant, right? They are the leaders. If you look at educational institutions, corporate 500 companies, and secondary institutions, they have selected another product. And we have gone down this path. Now, we were told initially we needed to go down this path because of the ability to be able to spoof the numbers from the campuses. What we weren't told that Zoom had that capability at that time in a separate feature. And so we've gotten into this, Dr. Rogers, I appreciate you putting kind of a cap on it. We've gotten into this because we were led down the path that there was nothing else that could compete with it. It just begs the question, why were so many other organizations, including Harvard and MIT and University of Texas and the ecosystem, so focused on, and by the way, this is the worst view of any of the tools that are out there. Right? I mean, this kind of view, this gallery view, is very difficult to manage. And so it just seems to me that what we would have wanted to do was say, because what is every vendor? Every vendor in COVID today is doing this. We're offering you a free 90-day trial, 100-day trial, free, help you through COVID. And then you know what happens? The sales management team goes, you better monetize that thing because we'll let them use it for 120 days. And now all of a sudden, we're in a situation where we have hooks in that we have to use it. And it just doesn't seem reasonable that we wouldn't have gone to a procurement process, because one thing that has happened in the last 3 months, all of these products, and there are about 4, have matured drastically. And so we could have used the summer months to maybe tweak that. I think that there's how many times have we lost board members in a board meeting? I can't tell you one Zoom meeting I've ever lost a person in. Just one. That's just an example. Capel uses Teams. Maybe look at Teams. Use Skype, right? Look at when CNN uses WebEx. They consistently have problems with their WebEx users. When John Chambers, former emeritus chairman of Cisco, does calls, he uses Zoom. So the question is, why wouldn't we go through an equitable process to look at what's available to see if it's the best solution for us?
Yeah, and the only thing, Mr. Miller, that I disagree with is, as Mr. Kobeck said, we had 10 days to get this rolling. So I feel like the decision-making in that situation was sound. I guess the question is, do you want to go through, and all the trustees have expressed numerous times their concern about the load on our teachers, Do you want to go through and change a system 3 or 4 months later to require more training on a new system versus let's try to get through this next year? That's still a little uncertain with the tools that we have. And I will tell you, and I've not heard any complaints from teachers, and I've talked to a bunch of them, or from principals about WebEx. Now, Mr. Kobeck, I don't know, you're on the technical side, so you may have, I'm sort of putting you on the spot, but have you heard major concerns from teachers or other users? We have 3,600 teachers that use this tool.
No, I haven't. In fact, there's been some issues, but it's been very heavy on the positive side. I've gotten a lot of emails saying that we're grateful for the tool that we put up, the calling features, how they're using it with their kids. So it's been very positive.
Dr. Rogers, though, of your peers, how many districts are using WebEx?
I know of several. I haven't taken a tally, but I will tell you that there are a lot of people. Matter of fact, Lake Dallas reached out today, Dr. Stinson, because they want to use WebEx, and I put them in connection with Mr. Kobeck. So, I think it's prudent that we not. I totally understand your concern about the hook. And that's, anyone would have done that, which is why I didn't want to get locked in long term. But I am concerned if we just changed it after 3 or 4 months. I don't think the timing is right for us to change it.
Have we compared the cost of this to other options?
Did you hear that question, Mr. Kobeck, as far as comparing the cost? Do we have any idea about
I
what
heard the question, but no, we have not. We've implemented what we've implemented. We're trying to get the licensing in place to continue this for a year.
So, I mean, I guess I'll leave it at this, because I think you guys are going to stick to your guns. I think it's a bad decision, but I would say this. We do not buy products this way. But we are buying this product this way, even if it's for another year. And there's nothing more long-term than a short-term solution. So we use it for another year. We'll use it for another year. And what you're going to find is that WebEx has always been the most expensive option. It's not, I don't think we're implementing it from a SaaS-based perspective. And the feature functionality that's available to us is pretty rich. And the security gaps have already been fixed by most of them. And so I just wonder, why is it that all of a sudden that this is the thing that we decide that we violate all procurement practices?
Mr. Martin, can you know, because the words like violate all procurement things sort of bring me to you. Can you chime in on whether or not we're violating procurement law on this?
Yes, sir. Dr. Rogers, Mr. Miller, board, the process that we went through was a request for quotes from multiple competitively awarded, cooperative awarded vendors, and we did do a formal process through vendors that had been awarded, and it was a competitive process. And the recommendation from technology, did review those pricing and their offers, and I think that where they landed, and specifically, we're looking from a state cooperative bid. So no, everything, all the rules were followed, and all the processes were, meet all the procurement requirements by the state.
So I think to Ms. Prosnick's point, can we see those? Can we see those RFP responses? Can we see those rubrics? Can we see the pricing? Like we would on some of the things we're going to talk about here later on, and see what they look like.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
I think the answer is absolutely. I mean, that's not an issue. Just wanted to clear up the undercurrent that it might not be legal. And
well, if we're gonna attach it to the bond now, then we get into a whole different ballgame of procurement, because it's not short term. We pay for it out of bond monies.
Mr. Kobeck, we're not paying for this out of bond funds. We're paying this out of 199 technology funds. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. And now, Ms. Lasan.
I don't have any major questions here. I just would comment that, I've used, my kids didn't have any trouble with WebEx. And I use Zoom for work and WebEx for this, and my husband used WebEx for his work, and the only problems we ever had was too many people on the internet at the same time. I mean, so I completely appreciate what you guys have done here, and I think it was amazing, for one thing, and I certainly would hate to have to for our teachers to have to learn something, their teachers and staff to have to learn something new, very quickly. I'm still hoping that we won't even need it in the fall, but hey, I might be, wishing.
Well, I think that times will require us to need it, even in some good ways, like Mr. Kobeck spoke about. I think we've seen in special ed where there are parents that are going to want to use this tool for ARDS because they don't have to drive up to the school. I mean, so I think there's a lot of positives out of these types of tools that we will continue to use in other ways.
And not to mention just the phone call thing, I think that's really great that if a teacher doesn't want to have to use their personal cell phone, that would show up on someone's caller ID. I mean, I think that's really great that they don't have to do that anymore.
Okay, thank you all for all of your comments, and I want to reiterate that we appreciate the work that your team did, but I think that any board, and I think we would all agree on this, that anytime we look at what we're doing that we constantly have to be reevaluating. And so in that next year, at the end of next year, I look forward to that reevaluation, because I have seen on the news where some high school students have taken this time to rewrite complete programs of stuff. So there is no telling who out there might be, a 13, 14-year-old is going to come up with some better way that's going to outdo all of these. So in a year, I think that not only our options will be greater, I think that they will be more secure, they will have more features, and I will look forward to that, and I just will appreciate the continued use of this through the next school year. So thank you. All right. So we are still Mr. Kovac.
All right, thank you. The next item is part of our Year 3 technology bond, and this is specifically for our learning devices. And as you know, we've brought together a master plan that showed what we were going to do each year. And on Year 3 was really about addressing our shared devices and maintaining some of what we did in Year 1 and 2. However, one of the things that we were working on pre-COVID, we had our technology advisory committee in place, and we were, I felt, getting into the heart of how to address technology standards and looking at our opt-in, opt-out numbers, and looking at how to help close some of those gaps, and then also what are our current standards at each level, from PK3 to the 1-to-1 and our shared technology across the district. So what we have not been able to do in our response to these last 9 weeks is to continue meeting with that group, and we do need to continue to meet with them and bring the board a full plan for what Year 3 looks like. What this is essentially what I would call the bare minimum of what we believe we need at this point, without bringing together a finalized full plan. And essentially, with having to implement at-home learning, we had to mobilize and provide laptops to a lot of our staff that, if they're in an aide position, or people that just don't have laptops, they have desktops, and they're working from home. Assuming we may need to continue that to some variation, what we ended up doing is actually taking laptops off of carts and issuing those out to staff. So this recommendation we're going to end up bringing forward is essentially to put in one laptop cart per campus. So we see that as an investment that wouldn't be stranded regardless of what the larger plan would look like, and it would allow us to have those other devices to be issued out to support staff in the interim. Also, we did issue iPads to students that needed them. And in that case, we know when we get back to a situation where that technology needs to be collected, we have to have some flexibility to get that technology back into the classroom. So we're looking to buy a small percentage of what we've issued. I think it's about 10%, to give us the ability to manage that return of that technology in a better way. And then obviously our incoming fourth graders, what we've been doing is for incoming fourth graders, we've been providing the new keyboard. In the fourth grade is the onboard. So this proposal is really made up of 3 things. It's the one MacBook cart per campus, the 10% of the number of devices that we've issued during COVID-19 as loaners, and then also the keyboards for the incoming fourth grade. So our plan on that, again, we don't have a board meeting in July, but our plan is to bring that forward next week as a recommendation, and then get the stuff ordered so that we can get it implemented and prepared for the start of the school year. So with that, any questions that you have on that topic?
And we're going to start over again with Ms. Cox.
Yes, I have a question. So, okay. As we were talking about the iPads last year with the keyboards, I was not a proponent for the fourth grade issuing that. So I'm curious if you have some data or some studies showing the implementation of that and how effective it was with a keyboard with our fourth grade students. I know the year was a little bit hard, but I would be really curious to see Did that make an impact for those students? Did they really need the keyboard? What does that look like?
I don't have any data on that. I mean, we could do some sort of survey. Rhetorically, yeah, I think we can get that. I think what I was going to say rhetorically, we've talked about it at the Technology Advisory Committee, and we did talk about the impact of having the keyboards, and I feel the consensus is that it's been very valuable, and that the thought is the device is more, productive, more efficient. It's been a good tool, but I don't have any quantitative data that would say that.
And then is there a price point that's going to be issued in our board book, or?
I believe it's already in there for in June 8th. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ms. Prosnick?
Would there be any benefit, if we were going to have a meeting in July, to pushing it to July? Would we have more information?
I don't think so. And I think if we're going to issue, iPads to the fourth graders, then I would say we probably got to issue them if we're going to do some other model of, if we're not returning to normal, I think we're going to have to move up our deployments because kids are going to need them right away. And looking at supply chain and getting the stuff ordered, it's going to be critical that we get the stuff ordered. So what we've been doing on that too is, as our seniors as we've been collecting the devices, what we're doing is we're trying to maintain those keyboards and circulate those back in. So they might, if a kid comes in and says, hey, my keyboard doesn't work, we will give them one that works. It might not be brand new. So we're using that inventory to kind of maintain the program. But to have, especially now, you could, I think obviously we would clean everything. We're cleaning and sanitizing the iPads, but just to make sure we're issuing a new keyboard with the iPad, that's what we're really trying to accomplish.
And what has the return on those loaned out devices been?
We haven't collected them at this point.
Is there a plan to?
Our plan will be, if we end up coming back per normal, we'll be working directly with the campuses. So we have that, everyone is in our inventory by student, by campus, and we'll work on, working those lists just like we do with senior collections. Here's who has it, we need it returned.
Yeah, Ms. Prosnick, certainly we plan to collect them. We just don't want to collect them and then have to turn around and reissue them until we see sort of what the start of school looks like.
So we're not going to make that call, if you will, until after August 12th?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Mr. Miller? No questions. Ms. Lasan?
So my question is, I think, pretty easy, and you've probably told me this already, so I apologize. But for the fourth graders, they get like recycled iPads from that were the seniors?
Correct.
Okay. And so when you're saying you're purchasing new keyboards for them, is it because the seniors did not have keyboards?
No, they had keyboards. It's just that we had a certain amount budgeted in there to replace keyboards. And I think what we're finding is instead of, and some of them, they're, they're used, right? Yes. They're used, and some of them are, some kids pick on the edges and stuff like that. To hand that back down into a fourth grader getting it for the first time, we feel like that's kind of the one piece to kind of keep that whole component nice. And then also they, as well as they take care of it, they'll keep that during the time that they have it. But what it's really allowed us to do is manage the keyboards that, and some of them, if they quit working, we have a surplus that we don't have to go out and buy them, and we can issue them back out. So it's really allowing us not to have to do like one big purchase of keyboards to manage it for the 36,000 iPads that are issued. We're using that inventory to do that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Ms. Hassett?
No questions. I just really appreciate the forethought in putting this together to make sure that we continue with instructional continuity, because I have asked Dr. Rogers how we are planning on making sure that we're up and ready to go when school does eventually get back on track, and making sure that we have these devices available is very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you remind me, how old were the keyboards that the seniors were using?
They would have used them 2 full years.
Okay. Boy, it seems shorter than that. Okay, 2 full years. It does seem shorter. And that was my one question: is how are we moving those senior iPads, and are we in the supply chain? I know some of these companies were shut down and not open. Are we secure in the fact that we know that we'll be able to get those turned around? And if they're not.
Yeah, we have been monitoring that, and I feel like if we can get it, ordered in June, we're going to be able to get it in time. If kind of back to Ms. Prosnick's question, if we had a meeting in July, I don't think we would, just based upon what I'm hearing on the supply chain, especially on the key or the case component that we have on the ones that we loaned. Those are further out in the supply chain.
Yeah, I ordered something the other day, and it's going to be July the 16th. So, yeah, so it made me pause for a moment because it was this related. So, okay, well, thank you. If nobody else has any other questions or comments, we'll move on then.
Yeah, and Ms. Sells, I will say, as
Thank you.
Mr. Colbeck alluded to, and Ms. Prosnick's question is a good question about could we wait? We'd have more details, and we actually talked, as we're trying to schedule this special board meeting to talk about the past, COVID-19 response and what the future, we actually talked about that. We were just concerned that we couldn't, if we waited till then, we might not could get them here before the start of school.
Right.
Otherwise, we would have done it that way.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, well, back
Okay.
to Dr. Rogers.
I'm up. So we have 3 GMPs to talk about briefly. So the first one is about the LHS athletics project, and this is phase 2. The board's already approved phase 1 of the GMP for these projects. So in the document, the discussion item, it talks about the entire list of projects. It's the high school ancillary building replacements, and you all saw some diagrams on that recently. The football press box replacement, turf replacement, baseball press box, and some other items, baseball ticket booth, track and field relocation of some things there. This GMP is just for the phase 2 of that project, which really is the ancillary building replacements and the football press box replacement. So that has been advertised and bid, and so by Poe Construction, who is the construction manager at risk, and the GMP is for $17,475,515, and that does represent the best value for the district. So if there's some questions on that, we will certainly punt that to Mr. Fight.
Okay. Ms. Prosnick, do you have any questions? No questions. Mr. Miller? No. Ms. Lasan? Ms. Hassett? Ms. Cox? She has
One question.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's
Will this cause delays for practice for them, or any of that with their games? Will this cause any delays?
No, I know that's all been planned, and of course there's been a lot of planning with the campus folks and with the athletic folks, but Randy, can you give a little more detail than that?
That's absolutely correct. And so if you remember in the PowerPoint from last month, we have kind of a phasing plan. So this phase 2 GMP will be done in 2 phases, and that's to allow for the full football season to happen this fall, if we should be able to. And then everything will be done before football season the next year. So, and we are working with Coach Ford and all the folks at LHS to make sure they have all the facilities during the time.
Was that your only question, Ms. Cox? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, and no questions for me, so moving on.
Moving right along, GMP for the Colony High School Black Box Theater, the Colony High School Fine Arts renovation, and fine arts additions and renovations at both Huffines Middle School and DeLay Middle School. And so that's the projects. Jackson Construction is the construction manager at risk. The Colony Black Box and the Colony High School Fine Arts renovation, the GMP for that is $5,772,103, and then the renovations and additions at both Huffines Middle School and DeLay Middle School, the GMP for that is $4,400,828, and that's really about it.
Okay. Mr. Miller, do you have any questions? Ms. Lasan? Ms. Hassett? Ms. Cox? And Ms. Prosnick? No questions. Okay, we'll move on then.
Okay, and the last one, the GMP for the Emergency Responder Radio Antenna System project. And I do want to say up front, this was not an original project of the 2017 bond. If you remember, this came up, 6-9 months ago, because a lot of our first responders in our high schools, which are massive buildings and thick walls and, really have some problems as far as critical communication. So we talked to the board about that, and y'all were gracious enough. Certainly we want to make sure our first responders have good communication in our facilities, and so Huckabee was approved as the architect for this project back last September, and Jackson Construction is the construction manager at risk. And so this will provide an installation of an emergency responder radio antenna system at Flower Mound High School, Flower Mound 9, Hebron High School, Hebron 9, Lewisville High School, LHS Harmon, and LHS Kilo, Marcus High School, Marcus 9, and the Colony High School. And so the GMP for this responder system is $1,606,237. So,
okay, I think this time I'll just ask, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Hassett does.
The information that we received on Board Book said that LSE has been notified that some facilities do not have sufficient radio coverage. So are all the other buildings, do they have sufficient radio coverage? All of our middle schools and elementary schools and LISDAC and...
Yeah, that's a great question, Ms. Hassett. I think our first priority was our high schools. It's certainly something that we're going to take a further look at our other facilities, but we felt like our high schools, and should be the first priority to get this done. Ms. Randy, can you sort of give some other insight into Ms. Hassett's question?
That's correct. Yeah. So this was kind of the initial phase one to see what the scope actually looked like, and we've never done this before, and what the pricing looks like. So once we successfully get this system implemented at the high schools, I think the next phase, as we look at the future, would be looking at secondary, and then if there is any need on the elementary campuses.
Thank you.
I would add, on this project specifically, testing is done. So they actually go out and they do testing in the field to see where the dead spots are and what the needs are. And so the pricing is based on that actual part. And I also wanted to mention, this doesn't include any cell phone service improvements. We were actually quite shocked to hear that the price to improve cell phone coverage, because you have to do all the carriers, would be an additional $4 to $5 million. So I mean, we're able to do the emergency responder for a lot less than we would be able to do the cell phone coverage.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, Randy, so one of the things that the traditional form of resolving this problem is some types of increased radios, some types of coverage modules, those types of things. However, the new way of resolving this is through solutions like AT&T's FirstNet, Verizon has a solution out, et cetera. Have we considered those? Because those were solutions that were originally designed to deal with 911 issues, but to also deal with quite dense situations and to be more on a uniform platform, so they could go to their local platform, their local frequency, and they could get to a ISD frequency, and they're using not the modules within the building or the capabilities of the radio, but they're using a 5G network that would give a little bit more coverage.
So this project is as you mentioned, kind of the system that's within the building, the actual repeater for their radio systems. It's not the AT&T solution or FirstNet or anything like that. I think, excuse me, I think I need to check with Matt Garrett, but I think the thinking was we wanted to have a platform that would work across all of the police and fire departments, all the first responders, and so that's the system we'd asked Dr. B to look at design.
Yes, and that's correct, Mr. Miller. So this system is for all of our first responders, but FirstNet, actually, I got a new cell phone last week, and it has FirstNet. So we are planning on all LISD-owned cell phones to move to FirstNet, which is a great system that one of the providers you mentioned gives. So,
and Mr. Fite, just remind me, the Tech East to Tech West, those already have these systems, correct, or do not have these issues?
No, ma'am. So we've been looking at the issue on our new builds. So Tech West will have some coverage along with Henderson School, just because we're there, we're able to provide those systems. But as we mentioned earlier, this was just kind of a phase one into, okay, let's take a small bite of some campuses and see how much that costs, what the scope looks like. And so obviously, as we move into the future, there is a Tech East edition in the bond, and so we can obviously look at that project adding the system.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on.
I think, Ms. Sells, we're done, and so now it's, I think, Mr. Miller.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Okay. Pursuant to RFP 2262-19, internal audit and other related services, selection of first-year internal audit service products. The committee, which consists of myself, Ms. Hassett, and Ms. Prosnick, and actually Craig Martin, participated in the next round. The initial rounds, I won't go through too much of the history. I think it's codified someplace, but we decided that we would put out an RFP for multiple areas. We've got 5 respondents to that. Those RFPs, and then we used our efficiency study for that, and then we we selected 3 that we wanted to bid on some very specific things that we felt were important to the staff and to us, and that was 1, governance. So this is how we govern ourselves, right? So we're looking inward first. You'll hear us talk more about that. The second is PEIMS. PEIMS is a monolithic thing. I don't know if Dr. Fitzhugh is still on there, but there's a lot of ways that data access and egress in and out of systems and non-systems and different things like that. And so it's an area where at the campus level, you can just start to, sometimes you just make some mistakes or get lazy or whatever, things change. And so there's some things we're going to look there at, extensive amount of things we're going to look at in PEIMS. And then the third area is employee services. So this will cover the gamut of employee services, how to help, how to use retirees as ambassadors, how to take care of our employees. Is the organizational construct proper? Are we providing the right benefits? Our payroll, succession planning is an example. We're not talking about succession planning, Dr. Rogers, at your level, but at other levels, succession planning comes into play when you start looking at employee services. So it really gets into some deep thinking around an analysis and actually representation graphically, which us computer science guys like, right? But I think Christy does too, that you'll see this come together. So let me just read the points here that we've agreed to. And Craig, did you want to say anything before I step into deep water?
No, sir. I think you covered a lot. It was a very extensive process once the board decided to select the 3 firms. They were selected back in January, and then the areas to review or get pricing on was determined after February's meeting. No, that's it.
Yep. So the internal audit firms that went through this first year selection process, so there were 3, were LISD Board of Trustees awarded, selected, and qualified firms. So we had qualified 3. We had 5 bid. We had 3 based on the things that we wanted to focus on. There are 3 things we wanted to focus on, right? PEIMS, employee services, and governance. This was a multi-step process that the board audit committee reviewed and discussed each we discussed each firm's proposals, was as well as conducted a scheduled video conference meeting with each firm, letting them play out what their deliverables look like, talk about their experiences, do some Q&A, et cetera. Having multiple Board of Trustees awarded audit firms allows the district to receive multiple quotes on a per project audit area to determine best value and for up to 5 years. So this means that we can, it's just like the CMR kind of portfolio. At any point in time, like Randy and Jason can go out to those vendors and they can look at capacity and bandwidth and deliverables and other projects. We can do the same thing, is all this is saying. We had a detailed scope of work, timeline, cost, proposed team, et cetera, all help in the process of determining best value for each of these 3 specific audit areas. The initial governance internal audit area as the kickoff audit area seems to make the most sense from the discussion within the committee and the audit firm. So in other words, when we started talking about this, we said, let's look at ourselves first and what kind of information can we get post-haste so that we can go into Team of 8 having data that shows what we're doing. And a lot of this would be working with Jeff on policy compliance and adherence and those types of things, right? It's not limited to that, but it's those types of things. We expect to utilize, for governance, we would expect to utilize 1920, that's this year budget funds, for the governance audit area and 2021 funds for the PEMS and employee services. We're suggesting governance first because of timing in the year as well as modeling the way for all departments. We anticipate finishing the governance, the board self-audit, self being led by the firm, in time to use the data for the first Team of 8 training, which would be whenever you schedule it, Catherine, sometime in the fall. We want to note that we anticipate the larger 2 audits ending in the fall of 2020, with the following year's audits consistent with the charter, which is we're going to talk about next, to be discussed next, selected by March 2021. So in other words, we would complete these in the fall, and we would be looking at what's next on the docket by March of the next year. So we'd be starting again, right? Here we're in May because of where we're at in the cycle, but we would be picking projects that they could start at the beginning of the year. I don't need to read that last sentence. And I'll open it up to Christy and to Jenny.
Go ahead, Ms. Prosnick. You're still muted.
You want to go ahead and go?
I was pointing to Christy to go, but that's okay. All I would add is that the process, once the board established in January the areas that they wanted to do an audit on, and we sent that, and Craig helped us immensely in sending that out to the selected firms. I can just say that all 3 firms, we had a Zoom meeting with actually all 3 that lasted at least an hour each. And so we were able to, I think, really get answers to all of the questions that we had as a committee to make sure that we were bringing forward a good decision to the board. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Ms. Hassett?
I concur with my committee mates. For me, for all of us, really, the process was a really, really good, thorough process. Definitely appreciate Mr. Martin's assistance. Some of the firms led us down the path of the audit a little bit better than others. This is the first time we've ever done it. And so they explained, there's a varying degree of explanation of what would be done. And some of the firms were very good at explaining exactly what the process would look like, what the data we would receive from the data, how we could implement changes from that, all the while making sure that we knew that this was not a gotcha for staff. That these are things that we can do to assist the district to improve, and that's another reason why we also decided to start governance with ourselves. So we're looking forward to starting the process, and I think that's about it.
So next week we will have, we'll basically have two items. We'll talk about the third one here, which is the charter, but we'll have two items from a budgetary perspective. Really, one now, we're going to allocate an amount of money now because we've not notified the vendor, but we've coordinated our schedules so that we can start meeting on the 9th, 10th, or 11th. The vendors don't know that yet, right? They'll be included with, Jamie's working those schedules. So we expect to move on that very quickly so that we can get information to you, Catherine, by the time we do that. And Dr. Rogers will be very involved in this process, as will Mr. Crownover, I'm sure, and whoever else in the process. The second piece of what we will talk about next week would be the PEMS and the employee services audit. That is a bit larger amount of money, and it would come out of would need to be put in the June budget, wherever, I don't know if you guys had internal audit before, but wherever we put that in the spot going forward, and we would expect to start that in September. Now, what would happen is that we would, upon selection next week, if the board agrees, we have asked Jamie to start scheduling people from staff that we can have the vendors give to the members of staff the presentation that they gave us, because we felt so confident, and Jenny, I'm going to look at Jenny too, so confident after that, we really kind of went into these kind of wanting certain things and seeing certain things and hoping certain things, and then it just kind of all came clear at the end when we had our final meeting, and we'll get to talk about that in more detail, but we're preparing for a positive board vote so that we can move things along. Just know that the imposition on staff would be, we want to respect the fact that that's going to be sometime around September. As I mentioned to Brian at the graduation, there are going to be things here that IT is going to benefit from. I mean, this is like some of the other audits we've done. Really, really good stuff that will impact other areas, that other areas are saying, boy, I could really use that help. So.
Okay. Now I think I will open it up to questions from Ms. Cox and Ms. Lasan. Ms. Cox, would you like to go first?
Yes, please. I'd just like to thank Mr. Miller, Ms. Hassett, Ms. Prosnick for your hard work in this committee. So I think I'm looking forward to the audit and the outcomes. And like you said, they're not gotcha moments. It's just ways we can improve financially or just things we can do better in the district. I did have a question about the board operating procedures and kind of the wording, and I don't know if this is a Mr. Crownover question, but the perception I took from it was that this was something we were going to do every year. And, so are we doing audits every year, or, what does that look like?
Would you like to answer that, Mr. Miller, because you...
Yeah, so I think when we get to the charter here, it kind of sets the framework for what the committees would look like, because we'll have a roll-off schedule. I mean, right now it seems natural to let us kind of follow it through the fall to finish that project of the audits, and then we would start looking at revising what the committee would look like, so others would be on the committee. There are a number of things that, again, Ms. Cox, we as a board would need to agree to. The board, the Internal Audit Committee will only do a audit in 21-22 if the board agrees to do it. So the board still has all the leverage there. Am I saying that right? Yeah. So the board could say, we're not going to go down and do activity funds or something like that, or something new may come up. Activity funds is a hot one right now. A lot of people are doing activity fund audits. But Angie, we would give the board the authority to make that determination.
Angie, Mrs. Cox, it would really be based on the needs assessment that we had earlier and the things that were high in importance to do, but that weren't selected this year. So we'll reevaluate the needs assessment and decide if we want to do an internal audit on any other area that was found to be possibly needing attention. So that will be done in March next year.
Okay, so I guess what I'm just asking is that it's the verbiage that we're putting in the board operating procedures, and of course we're all discussed that, but that we don't make the perception that this is something ongoing. So as we're not on the board someday, years from now, that the perception is the board's going to continue to pay and do for, audits every year?
I think it's really probably up to the board.
It's, yeah.
If we've started it now, that's really just like we discussed earlier. It's really according to what the board is going to approve. So we're putting it on board board in the BOP that we're going to start the audit, but really as a year by year basis as to whether funds are available or whether there's need available. All of those things will just be evaluated. Just because we have it in the board operating procedure doesn't mean it has to be done every year. Probably should be evaluated every year to determine whether it should be done.
And I'll chime in, Ms. Cox. Board operating procedures are not, they're just guidelines. They're not binding. So anyway, I don't think any future board would be tied in by that being in the board operating procedure. And I think Mr. Crownover would agree with that.
Yeah, and that is my understanding too. I don't think that any board, especially this board, would want to tie future boards to something like this without that board's ability to have input. I'm not, is he there? Okay.
Yeah, any future board has to do is change up those operating procedures. It's a pretty simple thing to do, so I'm with you.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Ms. Lasan?
So thank you for the work, and I will say I am glad that we're doing governance first. I think that's a good idea. So part of it being a committee is so that, we're, as the rest of the board, are trusting you guys with your selections. But I did just, reading through the non-public bid tabulation, so I'm not sure exactly what all I can say, but the selected group is quite a bit more expensive than the other ones. So I'm assuming it's because something in their presentation sparked something that was better than the other ones. So I don't know what you want to say about that, but it's pretty significant. So that's all I wanted to point out.
I would say that the group or groups that get selected, because we'll announce those next week, are we had to make a decision on best value. And when we looked at timeline, deliverables, the types of questions that were asked of us, the recommendations of the different types of ways data flowed between systems, believe it or not, employee services, PEMS, IT all have some common things, right? This was a best value decision for us. So it's and we had Craig involved to make sure that Craig also would have evaluated this based on the lens of procurement and not just the will of the board and to go in a certain direction. That he scored it a certain way and then would share with us how he scored it, which was consistent with the best value proposal.
Ms. Lasan, I would add that it was very evident through the presentations that we would be getting what we paid for in a very thoughtful and detailed audit and presentation that we received. I can tell you that I'll say that I think that we all went in with our own prejudices with those three firms, and I will just speak for myself. I was really blown away with the presentations and the firm that we selected. Really, really impressed.
Okay. Ms. Cox, did you have anything else? No? Okay. Okay, Mr. Miller, I think you can continue on.
Yeah, so I think the last thing to Ms. Cox's point is, and I'm going to let Ms. Prosnick talk about this. She had the idea, and then Jeff modified it, but Ms. Prosnick looked at some other examples of charters, and what we wanted to do here is have a charter that is a matter of equity under the BOP that the vice chair, the vice president would always be the chair, but that there would be members that roll off so everybody gets a chance to participate, right? And so that's why if you see the timing of us getting the project done at the end of the fall, Dr. Rogers needs a stretch, and then making a selection for new projects in the spring, it allows for that transition and for everybody to play a role in it. So the words, Ms. Prosnick, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I think I did Thomas Jefferson proud in writing this document. The whole purpose of this, it was suggested by Gibson when they did the risk assessment. They asked us if we had a charter, and we of course did not. And as a committee, we decided that we're a very transparent board, and we did not want our committee work to be done in secret. We wanted it to be out in the open and the process of it to be out in the open. So while we will have this charter, it is the committee's hope that this just becomes an amendment to the board operating procedures, since it will be a standing committee. And since we have gone away from having standing committees on the board, that this would make it separate, and it would make the rules surrounding it transparent and open. And if you read it, Ms. Cox, one of the things it does say is that there is an annual review, and that annual review is then presented to the board. This committee has no authority other than to recommend. That's it. The members are voted on by the board. The recommendations are voted on by the board. I do not want the other board members to think that the committee's opinion supersedes their opinion. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm very proud of the document.
I don't have any comment.
No more.
No,
more
we had
comments.
Jeff look at it, just for whereases and.
Yes. Well, from my point of view, as the board president and having appointed or asked you all to serve, I am appreciative of the work and the time that you guys have put into this. And I think that moving forward, it has only shown your intent to make us a better board. And so I do appreciate that, and just wanted to express that publicly. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Very, very much. All right. So now moving on to Ms. Hassett.
Okay, so the next two items are for resolutions. So this process is something we've done in the past. We've actually passed 11 different resolutions. This is for TASB's convention in the fall. TASB sets out a set of priorities that the members of the Legislative Action Committee, that's not right, Ms. Prosnick? Yes, it is, okay. The LAC. Mrs. Prosnick and I were part of the LAC, and so there are LACs in every one of the regions within Texas, and currently our LAC's priorities do not include the two items for resolutions that I've included today. So this is really just to get the rest of the state of Texas to be able to discuss these types of issues if they're not going to be included in the priorities suggested by TASB. So this is going to be what the delegate assembly will see and vote on come convention in September. The first one is removal of high stakes. We've actually put forth this resolution in the past, and it has not made it to the priorities that our LAC discussed. And I definitely think this year is the year that we need to try to push for the removal of the high stakes on our tests. The federal government does not require that the state puts high stakes on our students, and I think it's high time that we remove those high stakes from the students. Only 11 states in the United States have high stakes associated with their state tests. So I would like to drop that number to 10. So the first resolution is simply just trying to remove the high stakes for our students based on graduation and grade promotion for the state tests. Should we take them one at a time, I'm assuming?
Let's go ahead. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Hassett on that? And as a alternate to the convention, it allows that discussion to take place. And what happens if it just allows it to continue through the state, I believe it would be a good way to say it, because there will be attendees at that convention who have been elected to boards that have not had a lot of exposure really to this. And so it keeps bringing this into the dialogue, even though it might not raise to a priority. And so thank you for doing that. But does anybody have any questions? Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I would just say, this is a complicated one, you know. We always want to say that we don't want testing, but I am afraid that to some degree that TASB is out in front of us. I am concerned that the timing of this, in combination with our legislative agenda, I would prefer us not to have single resolutions. I mean, there's a lot of things that TASB has that we should probably take into consideration. The second item I have no issue with. But on the first one, I think that if it's September, let's take some time and process this. I would always prefer to hear what staff has to say. When we're going to write resolutions, that staff sees some value in those resolutions. And I get that this is probably, the thinking here is this is for TASB. And you know who I really feel has less influence than TASB does? I mean, I feel TASB has the least influence. You know who I feel has the most influence? Educators. And so I would like to see us work with our staff on the type of messages that we would like to deliver to our legislative delegation. It could be in part our legislative agenda and in part some other elevator pitches, but that we're using that rather than jumping on some TASB convention that they're, I mean, I feel like this is the Texas GOP convention and we have a vote on our ballot and we voted on a bunch of things. Some are poorly written and then now they're going to debate whether they're going to be part of our convention. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the most important things to Highland Village, Flower Mound, Lewisville, right? It just depends. And so that's my concern here. Is the timing right for us to write a resolution to TASB? Or is the timing right for us to sit with Dr. Rapp, Dr. Fitzhugh, and others and come up with a set of messages that may feed into that resolution, if resolution is the form that's required, or it may feed into something else, but in any case, they are in sync with each other. That's my thought.
Ms. Hassett, can you remind me, do we not have a deadline for, okay, please.
So the deadline to submit resolutions for the convention is June 15th. So any board that would like to submit a resolution has to do so by June 15th to discuss at the delegate assembly. And our internal LISD priorities are by and large already associated with TASB priorities that we've discussed at the LAC meetings. So we are already in agreement with our priorities and TASB priorities. And those are the top things that TASB itself will focus on, districts will focus on. These are just additional items that didn't make it to the level of a priority that is still important to the students and staff within the state to make sure that we address if the need arises. I think this year shows that testing has definitely been an issue. We were able to not have to worry about state testing at the end of this year, and we need to make sure that we're trying to make sure what's best for our students, and the removal of that high stakes would be very helpful.
And so if I could respond, so I think there's a whole list of things that TASB has that we should look at holistically and decide and really get input from our staff on what we should put in that June 15 document. If this is just a document that's about testing, I'm going to opt out because I think that this kind of throw a spear on testing, throw a spear on testing, throw a spear on testing is not, it's got a low level of efficacy, it's not had a lot of success, and I think that the intent of what I'm hearing is that we have an agenda to discuss at TASB. One of those things is testing. I would assume social emotional is one of those. I assume that remote learning is one of those. I mean, I haven't read them all, but there's a number of things beyond testing that we should be putting in our resolution. And so let's not fall into the trap of it's always testing. Let's look at what those other things are and put those in the resolution if that's what we have to do.
If the resolution if we support something that's already in a TASB priority, the TASB says, never mind, that resolution is already covered in a TASB priority. So there are maybe you should attend the delegate convention assembly. This would be helpful. So if we submit something that says social, emotional needs of our students, and it's already associated with a TASB priority, they're like, yep, check, that's already covered. So this is something that has not yet been at the level of a TASB priority. And yes, you're right, we definitely have not had a big swing to try to make testing better for our students since HB3 in 2013. So we need to make sure that's quite a long time to try to improve the testing facilities within or testing mandates for our students.
So are you saying that testing does not fit one of the things that TASB believes is a hot priority?
Correct.
Well, then
it's not on the top 5.
Okay, then I think we have to have a long discussion about TASB and what they're doing on behalf of LISD when we believe and have consistently believed it's a top priority, that we should not have to go through resolutions to make it, a priority. If TASB, as a representative body that we pay for, does not believe that testing is one of the top issues in our state, then I would wonder what I'm
saying is we have a process every year before legislative session to come up with priorities. TASB does too. So TASB comes up with priorities based on the LAC meeting that Jenny and Mrs. Prosek and I have attended. And that's based on all of the Region 11 districts coming together and saying what are the top 5 for us. So we all agree on these top 5. And then we come together as a giant LAC committee within Texas. And we try to limit it to about 5 priorities. If it's not in those 5 priorities, that's when districts submit another item called a resolution to say it didn't bubble up to the level of everybody in the state saying, right now, COVID is going to create a lot of the priority issues this year and how we're trying to deal with COVID. So testing probably will not meet the TASB priority list. I think this is the year that we could get some movement on testing and trying to eliminate the high stakes. I'm not trying to eliminate testing. We can't federally. I'm just trying to eliminate the unnecessary burden of kids being sick and nervous and throwing up for something that only 11 states in the United States actually still do.
So it really starts grassroots, and it starts at that region. And then this LAC meeting, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but the LAC will meet one more time. They usually meet the weekend of San Antonio SLI. And I would imagine y'all are going to meet virtually sometime around that time to firm up the priorities. What Ms. Hassett is asking is that if the high stakes doesn't make those top 5, I went to Region 10 because I wasn't available for Region 11 that they went to. Region 10s were different than Regions 11. The priorities, it really is the people in the room. That's why it's important for all of us to be there to share our input. So the LAC will actually meet after the deadline for this resolution. Now, if that rises, but the problem is that if you've been at that convention, is that if you add a lot of stuff to a resolution, it doesn't get brought up, read, and then discussed. And I think for me, and after thinking about it this afternoon, for me, it's part of our responsibility to educate those in the room. And so even if it is not a priority that has been brought to the high level, the 5 top priorities, we are still having a voice in the room about that. And so, Ms. Prosnick, you're part of that LAC, and you've been to the convention in that general, I believe. Would you concur, or other thoughts?
I would concur and remind everybody how large the state of Texas is and how it is there are some issues that are definitely statewide, and there are definitely regional issues. And I completely agree about having a voice at convention. And without having the LAC, that first real LAC meeting, well, I guess the second one, the second LAC meeting after the deadline, you don't, in fairness to Ms. Hassett, we don't know if this is going to be a priority. We could be very surprised in regions 1 through 8 made it a top 5 priority. I'm doubtful, but they could. But we wouldn't know that until the 17th is when our meeting is. So it kind of puts us at a disadvantage in putting this forward, in not putting this forward.
And then at that convention, if the resolution is read, then you get all those for and all those against, and then you get that discussion. And I think that is where we become better.
And that's where the amendments come in.
Yes, and that's where the amendments come in, and the amendments on the amendments.
But should we not be aligned with our staff?
And
I mean, are we going to do this in conjunction? Are we going to sit down before we approve a resolution next week with Dr. Rapp and Dr. Rogers and agree on what, because what we are is we're talking about the board operating as TASB, and I'm telling you, that's not who the legislature listens to, okay? They listen to the educational staff. And so it's a good exercise, could be fun,
but this would not
why
be
why not have it line up with what our professional staff is doing?
And I want to make clear that these resolutions are not resolutions that then we present as we're walking the halls in Austin. These are not those resolutions.
Ms. Sells?
Yes.
I had a couple little comments. And some of them were just grammatical, which I'm happy to go through with.
I apologize for grammatical errors.
Okay. So I'll just, instead of going through all that, I'll just let you know that. The only thing as I was reading this is, and again, this may be still a bit of a newbie here, but then I got to thinking, one of you commented about other, parts of the state that may not be as familiar with high stakes. Whenever I think of high stakes, I think of high stakes testing, not just the word high stakes. So I wonder if there would be some part where you could explain a little bit more in the resolution of what you're going for. Like, if it's just, because you did say a single test on a single day, and that's helpful. But, overall, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I got to go to the delegate assembly last year with Ms. Cox, and that was super fun. But anyway, so that's what I would just say with that is maybe just, and I know like you were saying, you don't want it to be super long either, right. But just a little more, just a little more of what you're going for there.
But
so,
I do understand, and I don't want to disregard Mr. Miller, and so maybe we need to have, before we do vote on this, maybe we could get some input from a staff member. I don't want to burden the staff on items that I feel like, though, as far as this resolution, because this is our convention, although some of them do attend with us, that this is really the work of the board.
Yeah, and Ms. Sells, we'll be more than happy to volunteer Dr. Fitzhugh.
Oh, yeah.
But I totally get Mr. Miller's
Yes.
point, and I will tell you, just in general, we certainly absolutely agree with the concept of removal of high-stakes testing. I mean, we've all been totally in favor of that. So, and I've read the statement of reasons. I think it's, valid. I think, there, as Ms. Lassonde says, if we need a little more context, we can certainly provide a sentence or two from the expertise of Dr. Fitzhugh before next Monday.
Okay. Are you, anybody else? Okay. So Ms. Hassett, move on.
Okay, the next would be a resolution for virtual learning, and we had a wonderful presentation on that earlier. This is definitely going to be a political football during convention because most districts are very, very nervous. When they hear online learning, most districts in the area immediately go to vouchers because the way it's written now is the 6 or 8 entities that currently can, if they would open that up, then just like we have an issue within our district, more online learning providers could come into the district. Like right now, we have 2 charters that have come into the district. And actually, we should probably tighten up language because more charters could come into the district. But this is really just to do what Dr. Bigenhoe had said earlier. How do we provide the options and tools to our students within our district without opening up online learning so that it provides a voucher that third parties can come in and take public education students away from us for profit. So this is geared toward just 2 of the things because I'm trying to, because this is such a hot topic, people's emotions are high. I want to make sure that we limit what we're asking for so that we don't put people on guard right away. I want to be able to have those good rich discussions on the floor so that they truly listen to what we're trying to do. Because right now, a lot of the rurals will just think, oh, Lewisville just wants to steal my kids. And that's not what we're trying to do at all. We're just trying to provide our students better service. And so trying to limit it so that we'll have better discussions. And there's a possibility, just like Ms. Prosnick said, there will probably be an amendment or 14 to this particular one if it's actually read at the delegate assembly because of the nature of online learning and the emotions with it. So,
Are there any comments or questions on that one? Okay. Well, motion to adjourn, and if there is no further business, then this meeting is adjourned, and the time is 9:39 p.m. Thank you all for hanging with us, and we will see you all soon. Bye.